Well, I am learning that I definitely don't want a gesso. Like the large.
This late again.
It's time for Gabbin Dude.
Live. I am live. I am live. Hello, everybody. I'm alive. Woo! I'm also live right now. Hi, Beans the Cheese Queen. Wave. All right. I see people are starting to tune in. That's good. That's good. That's good. Well, welcome everybody. It is another Thursday night, as per usual. We're going to be having a evening with a hello, Teacher Mary. We're going to be having a fun evening tonight with a illustrator that I actually met ages ago. I don't want to do the math on when it was, but it was, I'm going to estimate, let's do that. I'm going to estimate that it was probably 10 years back, something like that, when they came into my classroom, ages and age ago. And they are also a mentor at the school that I teach at, so basically they help out students remotely. And they sort of meet with students and go through their projects and things of the sort. And so my guess is that we know some of the same people, whether they want to admit to that or not. I will find out. But the guest that we're having tonight is the one and only Kristin Sorra. You can see right there, who did Mommy King. And then this is going to be one, I see Kristin's already watching, so Kristin, I'll let you in 1 second. This one's probably an oldie, and I don't know if it's even on their website, but this is one of the books that we had ages ago, Groundhog Weather School. And I remember we got this, it was probably through like a Scholastic thing or something. I forget how we got this, but we got it through some sort of school event, I feel like, when my son was really, really young. And so I remember reading through this and knowing it was after I had Kristin visit a class, and so when we got this, I was like, oh, it's a Kristin book. And so we went out and got it, and so it's an oldie, but it's showing up here. And I say oldie, it's not that old, but it's 2009, which in today's world feels like it was, I don't know, what, 15 years ago? It is. It's more than that. So I'm going to let our special guest here in 1 second. I'm going to put a Ask Us Anything, and you can tune in and chime in the comments at any point. Ask Us Anything. Did I spell it correctly? I think I did. And we will try to answer as we go along. Let me just pin that comment, and then I'm going to let our special guest in. Oh, no, I hit the wrong thing. How do I get out of that? There we go. Okay. I'm going to send a invite. It is on its way. So we'll give it a second. Whoa, I'm just getting some tracing paper ready. Kristin, are you there? Are you there, Kristin? I know you're there. You can probably hear me right now in the background as you're desperately searching for how to join. I can cancel again, or I'll cancel and I'll try it again. Ready? I'm going to try sending the invite right now. 3, 2, 1. Boom. It's on its way. It might be in your comment, or not comments, your, there we go.
Sorry about
that. We got it. Okay, no worries. Okay, so tell me, because I always ask this and I don't think I ever fully understand. When I invite you, where does it show up?
So there is a request to join. I'm getting some feedback, but there was a request to join, but then when I clicked on it, my camera setting was off.
Oh,
so
okay.
That's why it threw me off.
Okay.
Gotcha.
And
then it's on the bottom of the screen. I have to go click on your live feed again. Let's see if I can put this on.
Okay. I've always wondered, because it's rare that I do it and I forget. And then I'm always worried that like it's in some hidden spot that someone has to like really search. So anyways, that's an aside, but welcome to the evening of Gabbin and Doodling. I don't know if you remember, if you probably don't remember because you have a busy life and you get out there and see the world. But ages ago, you came and visited Montserrat in a senior class.
No. Of course I remember.
Yeah. And I think that's where we first met. And then you were up here in Boston for a while, right?
No, I had family there in the area, so I was visiting the area. But I think when I saw you, I've been in New York. I've been in New York
the whole time.
then.
Okay.
Yeah.
For some reason in my mind, you had lived in Boston and moved down to New York. But I was reading your bio again just to make sure I remembered it all. And I was like, oh, it says like Pratt and all this stuff. I'm like, when did you move up? And I was like, okay, maybe you didn't. So corrected me on that one. But so I have lots of questions for you, obviously, about your career and whatnot. But I must also say thank you for being a mentor at the school. I know that you've probably chatted with a lot of students.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Hopefully they're okay. Well, behind the scenes we can DM and talk about, okay, who was it? What did they do? How did they perform? Were they good or were they bad? But welcome for the evening. I've been enjoying watching your work throughout the years and have thoroughly enjoyed. Was this an old?
It's funny because it's funny you picked that one. That's one of my favorites still. I really love that book. It was kind of a turning point when I really tried to narrow down my style. I hate that word, but I still don't think I have one. So I'm always kind of traipsing about to the chagrin of agents.
Like I can see between the Mommy King and the Groundhog Day book, I can see, because these are like, I would assume, sort of opposite ends of the spectrum time-wise. Mm-hmm. One's early on and one is like recent. But you can see some of the threads that go through as far as like style and some of the like layering and textures that are hidden within are sort of consistent across the board. Obviously, you've gotten better.
Oh,
I'm not gonna, yeah. But I can see the connection between, even though there is like such a gap. Like if I look at mine, I'm sure that I would say like, oh, they're wildly different, but they're also like, you can see hints.
Yeah,
there's something in there.
There are traces.
So tonight, the plan of attack is that we're going to chat and draw and show people what we do. You can step off at any point in the night without worry. Like you can say, hey, I hate this, I'm out, and I will not be offended. The only people that might be offended are the viewers, but I won't be. I've been called worse things or treated poorly in class so many times.
Oh, no.
They just tease me. So if you say, I hate this, I'll just chalk it up as like, yeah, it's another one. And then what I need from you at the beginning here is a little info about you for those that don't know who you are. So give us a little sort of behind the scenes, quick, like elevator pitch. Who is Kristin Sorra?
Who am I?
It shouldn't be this hard. Yeah.
Well, when I was a very little one, well, I always drew all my life. And let's see. Oh, I don't even know where to start because I feel like it's been like this winding road, but I'm an illustrator. I do picture books. The main thread throughout my career has been picture books. So if I was doing some other venture, underneath of that was always picture books. Okay. So from when I was in college, I started out as a fashion major. I did not like sewing. You know, I prided myself with the fact that I could tailor a jacket with a lapel that would fold naturally. Yeah. But, you know, I did not like sitting in the studio behind a sewing machine at 3 a.m. And then I switched majors after taking some illustration classes, after taking a fashion illustration course I really, really loved. So that kind of, there are hints of fashion in my work, and I've always kind of teetered there, like, but just for fun. And then I switched to illustration 2 years after that. I didn't like the industry.
This was still while you were in school, correct?
Yeah, I was working in the. I knew someone that worked in fashion, and I had an internship for like a year and a half, and then I was very, very in that world. Like I did the fashion show, and like I was like the president of the fashion society, and I know I really was in it, and I just realized you know, I was even offered a scholarship for the third year. And then I said, I didn't want, I had to say no because I just didn't want to do it. That's how much I didn't want to do it. And but anyway, so I just, and then when I was doing illustration, I discovered, wow, you know, I didn't mind being up at 3 a.m. painting. Like I loved it. I was like relishing in being awake at 3 a.m. painting. I'm like, this is, I think, what I want to do. I don't know how I'm going to survive. That's what I want to do.
Are you still up at 3 a.m. painting?
No.
Okay, this only goes to midnight. That's where my
I
cutoff is, so you don't have to. Yeah, you don't have to go that far. The fashion thing. So I need to know just, and we'll get into drawing, and people who are watching, like, obviously understand. We'll draw here in a second, but I got to find out if you didn't like fashion that much. Did you know ahead of time, or was it just like you thought it would be really fun, and then when you got into school, it like didn't click in the same way?
No. Well, I mean, I didn't know what to expect because I just basically chose it because I had parents who were like, art, like, what are you doing? It was a practical choice at the time.
Gotcha.
And I saw, okay, well, someone's doing it. They're making money. And, you know, it's creative. I can do that. And I used to, when I was in high school, I used to design my, you know, dance dresses. I used to like repurpose things, but then I'd have my aunt sew them. She's amazing. My aunt would do all the sewing. Shout out.
Yeah. You wanted to design, not actually have to make.
Exactly.
That's yeah. Okay. I understand. Yeah. You were also in New York, which I assume that, like, especially with your parents, the understanding of like you're in the fashion hub of the world kind of situation. I mean, maybe Milan, but it's still, New York has such a big fashion district and whatnot that like the job, like when I think fashion, I don't go like immediately like, oh yeah, job placement. But that's because I'm in the middle of New Hampshire. And it's not like we have a big fashion hub here. We got a Target.
No, but what's funny is that I really wanted to go to Rhode Island for fashion, but I was like, it didn't make sense to go there. I couldn't afford the school up there, but but it didn't make sense to be in Rhode Island for fashion. It didn't make sense. So, I mean, I was glad to be in New York. It was a really fun school. I loved Pratt, but what was I gonna say? But anyway, yeah, I don't know. For me, I enjoy it from afar. Yeah. And I remember thinking, I was in the middle of the garment district, and I remember the fabric store that I was at. I have like an open studio here, and my dogs go in and out, so I'm gonna be like once in a while. Okay. What's going on? No worries. But I remember sitting in the middle of a fabric store, and you know, in the garment district, and those, I don't know if you've ever been to one, but these stores are like wall to wall full of fabric, and it was so overwhelming for me. And I was thinking, do they really need another fashion designer? I was literally saying that in my head. I was like, this is so overwhelming. Like, really, what am I doing? It was just the weirdest. Have you
ever been to, what's the one on Project Runway that they use all the time?
There's several. I used to remember B&J Fabric.
Mood?
Oh, that's like, I think that's a little trendier, but I think that was newer. It was kind of maybe. But I used to go to, because when I was interning, I used to go to this place called B&J Fabrics. I think it was called. I mean, so many years ago. And then there was a place that did. I was always in this Notion store where you buy buttons and
zippers. And
that was as an intern. That was where I was often tasked to go, and then I'd be like, it was so overwhelming. Like, pick a button in distress. That was the fun part because I actually got to do something creative. Yeah.
Can you hear in the background my cats? They're about to fight. Do you hear?
No, I can't hear them.
Oh. They're probably gonna hear a.
Oh, nice.
Just a second. They're having a face off in the corner, so that's my version of your dogs. Okay,
cool.
So tonight, a real quick heads up on a couple of things. One, again, if you need to step off, I'm not step off. I don't know, that's funny phrasing, but if you need to leave at any point, don't hesitate. Two, if the internet drops of some sort, we will keep going because my phone should be able to continue. What might happen on my end is the internet might drop on my end for the house, but we can use LTE and it still should go out to people. I just can't track what's happening on my iPad because I have a little delayed feed here to be able to watch. But what I need to know as well, material wise, what are we using?
Okay. So today I am going to go traditional today, and I think that's where I'm kind of moving
Okay.
into the traditional stuff.
Like in your portfolio in
In
general?
my work, yeah, in general. Like yeah, so I think for me, process has become so static when I've been working digitally, and also I've been noticing it's been really affecting my eyes. And so, I mean, you'd think that'd be harder on paper, but it's so much, and also just for me, a lot of it I realize is process and enjoying the process. I noticed that on a icon working, usually it's what's it called? Procreate, I would use. Or before that, it was an Adobe Fresco. But I found that it was, I was just kind of like, I just kind of traipsed along on it. I didn't really enjoy it as much as going back to painting. I was just really craving it. So so I've been really trying to hone like that. I started off doing oils. Like, I used to paint on paper with oils.
Okay.
And then when computers got fast enough, and I worked full time illustrating at a company for like a party company.
The party supplies and
Was that?
Yeah, party supplies and things.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
and
It was for Party City, but actually Amscan, who owned Party City, but now you know the big story, and that was a big story recently.
Yeah.
But they were great to work for because I really got to play there, and I really kind of discovered doing digital illustration there. So then I started doing digital illustration like around 2007. So from like 95 to like 2006 or 5 or something like that.
Yeah.
I'm feeding myself completely. I don't know. But I was doing everything traditionally.
Okay.
I was using oils on paper. And then I went digital, and I really liked incorporating the digital and the digital in groundhog. Is that your cat?
Hold on, let me see if I can solve what's going on here in the background. Okay. They're having a full-fledged fight in the background. They're just like going hard. Sorry, I couldn't hear the last bit that you said because of the cat.
Oh, that's okay. No, they get so distracting, these animals.
So answer me this, because this is a question that came up today in my class. We were talking, it's a professional practice class, and we were talking a little bit about the idea of digital versus traditional.
Mm-hmm.
And there were students saying like, well, everybody just wants you to do digital now. And I was like, I don't know if that's true. I think they want you to make good images.
Yeah.
And obviously there's an ease when there's digital with like, oh, you can send them layers and things of the sort. But
yeah,
like, as long as you make good images, they don't care. They don't ask ever.
Yeah, I think so. I think also I've noticed. I don't know if you saw, I don't know if you made it down to New York anytime when the original art show was up at the Society of Illustrators.
I have not, but
okay. Well, a lot of it was traditional. I mean, there was a good chunk of it that was traditional, and then there was a good chunk of it. It was so funny. I was like looking up close at a piece. I'm like, wow, that's like old school. And I didn't even look at the name. I'm like, and I saw like the editor. I was like, oh, it's Caitlin DeLuis. She was my first like big editor from Athenaeum, and she was the one who did my first trade book, which was The Three Billy Goats, Gruff and Mean Calypso Joe. That's what it was called, and it was a mouthful. And I saw her name. I'm like, oh, it's Caitlin. Oh my gosh! And then I saw that. I'm like, oh, it's William Joyce.
Yeah.
Duh. So this like fully rendered traditional piece, and it looked just cool. I mean, and he was one of my idols when I was in school. So I was just like, whoa, that's so cool.
I wonder, one of the questions I had was just like the move, and I could be wrong, but I think that there is, like, Sean Harris was on the jury for I think the original art show this year, maybe it was last year, and he mentioned too that like a lot of the award winners, a lot of the people that got accepted were traditional materials. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't that they were biased towards it. It just happened to be that it sort of landed that way. But I always wonder about sort of the pendulum in the art world of like, when digital came in, everybody's like, oh, digital. And then it faded a little bit and then it came back. Yeah. And I'm wondering, are we in that sort of move back towards traditional, or is it just, and forgive me, like in my case, I've always sort of stayed traditional, but I also know that like age weighs into it, where like you go back to your roots a little bit. You're like, oh, I got to get my hands dirty again. And so like all of a sudden it's I always reference like rock and roll, that people will be like, I'm gonna play rock and roll, and then all of a sudden they go back to like blues out of nowhere, and it's like they're going back to the roots of where it all came from.
Right.
And I'm wondering, like, this is it a do you, I mean, obviously if you're shifting that way, do you have challenges? I guess I can wait until later to talk about this, but just that, do you see challenges for you in the industry in the sense of like expectation of any sort, because your style has been relatively digital application previously? Do you think that people, like, do you have any hesitation about jumping towards that traditional material, or do you think
no, I don't think so. For me, my hesitation is my abilities. So,
yeah, your internal hesitation.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
but because I'm so like, I've been all of last year I've been playing, and I even took do you know Helen Dardick? She's like a surface designer.
Yep.
Okay, so I took a I went to, as a birthday present for myself, I went on a retreat in France and took her course, because
fancy.
like I need something. I know. Well, I mean, to be fair, and like it was a milestone birthday.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, don't say.
Okay.
Yeah, gotcha.
Okay.
You turned 30?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh. That kills me when I hear kids. I'm not gonna go there.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I think my purpose for taking her retreat was to get rid of that fear, that wall that I had that was up, and to just kind of dive in, because when she paints, it's completely intuitive, and you know, I kind of just wanted to go there so that I can break that all of this like that I had. And so it's so crazy, because I relied so much on the digital for so long that, you know, my instincts for painting were kind of, it was just getting harder and harder to go back to it. So, and then there's this fear of being influenced by all the new people, and you know, and back then I had books to look at, and I didn't see process. Like, I didn't know how people did their work, but now it's like people are sharing their process.
Yeah, you can see it, especially at Helen Dardick. Like, there's posts all the time from. So, material wise, what are we using tonight then? Like you said, traditional, but let's get into the weeds here. Sort of what materials, and are there brands in particular that you lean on?
Yeah, so the Holbein does I'm sure you know this.
I sure do.
Gouache, and then Helen did turn me on to this Japanese brand. I use this. What is this called? Kuretake, I think. These. Yep.
Are those watercolor or those gouache?
This is
what are they?
Watercolor.
Watercolor. Okay.
They're very saturated, and they kind of like, they're not quite gouache. They don't have the same finish as gouache with that chalky texture, but translucent. But it's still like much richer, like the color. So I do intermix them sometimes if I'm lazy and I don't feel like mixing from the tube. Okay. Like, I like grabbing the paint off the already mixed colors. So and they have like different, let me just, it might be easier for me to, I don't know if I can do this easier, so they have different palettes. So this one's I forget the name of this palette, and then they have like, I just got these darks, which is really nice because I was running out of black. I don't like to do pure black either, so they're nice because they're different. Sorry, 1 second. I have this. Sorry about that. Then I probably should turn it around, right? Can I turn my? Yeah, I can.
Yeah, the little. There you go. Yep.
And so, like, this is the full palette of colors.
Are they opalescent of some sort?
No,
or is that just the sheen, just the light on them?
Oh, well, actually, no. But there's a couple metallics here. But no, and then it might be the light you're looking at.
No, I've seen that brand, and I've seen a lot of people using that, specifically that brand, but also there's a couple that do the same type of cake in the same way, where it's these large sort of tubs of color, and it's not the like Winsor Newton tiny little
Right.
cakes of color. They're these
Yeah,
like
those
big,
little ones.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, these are big. What do
I
you,
like
what do
it. Right. I like it, I think. And the colors are great.
you, and then are there other materials you add in, or is it primarily just the paint at this point?
It's no, just the paint.
Huh.
And then I've been like, oh, and then like, so then I'll also use the Prismacolor
Yeah.
pencils. Like, just if you know, if to help with some accentuate some edges, and then and sometimes I've been playing with using these, and I actually started using Caran d'Ache, Neocolors.
Yeah, the wax.
Fashion it was great for fashion illustrating. So, and I love how you can mix water with it, but I like, they're so like for putting on top of a painting, if you want to just do a really fun accent or like texture, like it's so bold. I love it. So
I just got some Caran d'Ache colored pencils here that are Caran d'Ache Fluo, Fluo, that are like fluorescents the other day. But they're slightly thicker than a normal pencil, but they're really punchy colors. They don't look it, but when I draw it, it's like fluorescent orange. And I was like, oh, I'm gonna use that. So I got a couple of these the other day, but they were expensive. They were like $5 a piece. Yeah.
Wait, can you get those too?
I don't know. I haven't tried it yet. I'm gonna try tonight. I'll see what happens if I get some water on them.
Yeah, hold on. I had bought, I don't know if these are the same thing, but they also make these. I'm not using them now, but they also make these pencils, but I don't know if, I think these are different. So these pencils they're pencils, but they're also water soluble.
Yeah, see, I got this one's Supracolor Too Soft, and it does have a little brush symbol on it. This is Caran d'Ache as well. And so it makes me assume that these are water soluble.
Oh yeah, these have the brush symbols on it.
So I assume it's the exact same thing. And I actually like these better than Prismacolors at this point. Like, I think they're just a little bit softer and they adhere a little bit better. What are you using for a surface?
I've got
substrate, as some people call it.
What do they call it?
Substrate. I've heard people say that.
Substrate.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what it means. What are you using for paper?
Arches.
Hot press. Okay. Hot press. Okay, makes sense.
Yeah, and then I gessoed it. I go between gessoing and not gessoing, so I'm kind of playing right now. So, but I like how the paint sits on the gesso paper and the color is deeper. I feel the punchier, and then versus like soaking right in right away.
But wait a second. You're getting watercolor paper and then you're gessoing it?
I know.
Okay. More power to you. I don't. It's just one of those things where I'm like, what? What are we talking about?
I know. So I was playing with this. I was doing both. I was doing this time I think because it's a more complex piece I want to do. I'm trying this because this was my technique when I was doing oils. But I would do oils, and what I like about Acryla Gouache is that it mixes like oils, and so you could go more thick on it. But I'm playing with, well, how much do I want to render versus so.
Have you ever tried casings?
Yeah.
Do you like them?
I have them. I have Max paints. It's not casing, but it's like a water soluble oil, and it's weird, but it works. Like it's funny. Like I switched that when I got pregnant. Like I didn't want to be exposed to all that stuff.
Yeah.
And I wanted to play with it when I was still painting, and I liked it. I didn't mind it. I used it, but I didn't use it for very long. Gotcha.
It's one of those ones where I've never used it, but I just know that like inherently it ends up being a little bit like matte in the end, because like casings, at least, because it's milk based. But it also it takes like 2 to 3 days to dry, so it's like oil.
Yeah. But
once it does dry pretty fast compared to oil, and then you end up with that sort of flat finish to it. But it's in that sort of like, it's a mix between gouache and oil is the best way I can describe it. But I've never used it, but some people love it. Okay. I know that people are like, when are they going to start to draw? So I got to ask one last thing. And the last thing is, what are you going to be working on tonight?
I was coming up with all these little sketches, and I've been doing a lot of illustrations with my dogs because I live with them and they're in my head all the time. So I just did this sketch. Oh, this is the drawing I'm going to transfer. So it's really light, so I can keep transferring. And it's just a composition with this. It was based on this picture, this photograph of my dog.
Aww.
She's the puppy of the two dogs. I have two. So
it takes up an entire chair. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So, and then I think I'm going to add a cat in there as well. So I kind of and then I did a color study. So I still need to kind of, I did a color study on my iPad. Like,
oh yeah. It just tells you like where stuff has to sit. Yeah. Totally makes sense. Ooh, I like that palette.
Oh, thanks.
That palette is
so nice. I'm trying to focus on my, like, keeping it limited. Yeah. So that's what I'm practicing. So.
You mentioned my sketch tonight is, my sketches are like way looser than yours. This all I'm going with is a thing that looks like this. Oh, and that's it. Nice. You said the 3 billy goats gruff. Mm-hmm. I think I'm going to do the 3 trolls with maybe a goat or something on top. I don't know what it will be, but I wanted to do bricks. That's the only reason I'm doing this. I just wanted to draw bricks. I was like, okay, what's the surface I can draw that has bricks? And so that's
like, yeah, I like to draw my dog, so I'm just gonna draw my.
Yep. Yeah, it's every time I do one of these, there's always like a thing I want to accomplish. So I'm gonna aim towards that. So why don't we switch to our downshoots and we can just start talking and making and answering questions from those that have them. And again, I have my feed here, so I can sort of keep track if things go awry or questions and whatnot. And so. Once you, yeah, okay, you got a good setup. Wait a second. What's where are your hands coming in from? Can you
here?
Can you turn your phone so it's vertical?
Oh,
that's the only hiccup. Is just, and if you need to zoom out to get a wider shot, you can just pinch the screen.
Oh, okay.
I just want to make sure that people are looking at it not sideways.
Okay.
Through a majority of it, but there we go. That'll work. I'm just watching to make sure we're, and again, you can always pinch and sort of zoom out if you want to get the whole shot. That looks pretty good right there.
Good, because I think this thing that I have, it's like this adjustable arm, and it doesn't go that high, so.
No, it looks good. It looks good. We're in good shape. I need to figure out what I'm doing for a palette tonight for mine, because I want to get a little dark and grimy with it, but I do have those like fluorescents. I want to see if I can get those fluorescents in. And so
let's see how that.
So tell me a little bit. Like, I want to find out, and I know that you stopped doing fashion, but I want to find out sort of its influence on what you do now, and sort of how you approach your illustration work and art. Is there any overlap effectively between those two worlds?
So yeah, I mean, when I dress my characters, I would say that comes into play. Like the patterns and the patterns in the clothes, that kind of thing.
When you say you dress them, like, this is going to be a weird question. I am not the most fashion-oriented person in the world. I like the same outfit basically every day in different colors. It's plaid shirts, blue jeans. That's about it.
But I love painting plaid. I love it.
Well, I like painting it, but it's a pain when you have to replicate it over and over and make it. But the question I have is sort of how much of it, when you draw the outfits for the characters, how much of it is fashion and how much of it is like function when you draw? So like the equivalent of putting in plaid or putting in details, all of a sudden you have to do those details over and over and over again. And do you make that?
Yeah.
Do you like draw a line of where you can and where you can't go with the fashion choices in fear of like it might go too heavy and in a given direction? If that makes any sense. I don't know if that makes sense, but
what do you mean, like going too heavy in a given direction?
like,
You mean like over consumed with it, with
like,
the deep?
does it ever get to a point wherein you have too many bells and whistles in the fashion styling, where you're like, oh, I put too much plaid in and too many patterns, and now I have to count 15 different buttons on every sleeve every single time because this is I don't even know if that's fashionable at all.
You know, it's funny because I don't think I ever really I only considered that one in the few times that I've had animation projects. Like I've had what do you call it? Those I remember thinking about that for those app illustrations I had to do. Like I've had projects where I've had to do illustrations for apps and then think about the other movements for the characters. That's probably the only time I really had to think about that. And trying to minimize or simplify the details.
Because were you animating, or was it someone else?
I would be the one. So yeah.
So you'd feel the pain.
Yes.
You did it.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
The consequences.
Yeah. You make choices to save your own butt in the end.
Yeah. But otherwise, in a book, I don't think I overdid unless the character was about the clothes or something. Yeah. I don't think I ever, I often tried to match the clothing with the personality.
Okay. So, I mean, obviously like and I probably mispronounced it, but the Mommy King, is it Mom?
No, that's right.
Okay. Mm-hmm. With a book like that, you have to be somewhat historically accurate and, pay attention to details and that.
Yeah.
No, and I don't even know.
Yeah, that was tough. That book was hard, I think, in those in the research, and because there wasn't a lot of reference to go on. I mean, there was one person that did post a lot of those first, like it was his own project, and he posted all of these old photographs from the turn of the century, 1900, in the Philippines, and in exactly the town that I needed. I was like,
oh, really? That's
yeah,
nice.
It was. And maybe because the town was historic, it was the oldest Chinatown ever. So, and I didn't know this. Like, there was a lot I learned about the Philippines when I was doing that project. It was really great in that sense. And yeah, it was hard. And then some of the traditional dresses were pretty. It wasn't that different from what I'm familiar with already, just from growing up in a Filipino family. But yeah, I enjoyed it. It was more time consuming than I allowed myself.
Did you wait?
I underestimated that part.
Yeah. Did you meet your deadlines then?
Yeah, I did. I did have to push a couple. There were I had to push a couple because there was another project that kind of got in that kind of snuck in there. But otherwise, that was a tough year in general when I was working on that book. But
have you ever missed a deadline?
No. There was one time many years ago. I don't know. This is when I was doing comic books still for the most of of my bread and butter was in the comic book industry, and I had gotten this I had gotten this job for Cricket. I think it was Cricket magazine. I totally screwed that up. I never, that was the one job I'll never forget it. I just totally completely screwed it up. I just got this job, and it was it was my first, project with them, and they they gave me this assignment. I just literally forgot about it. And the deadline was coming.
Oh.
And then I didn't, not that I forgot about it. I didn't properly time it. And then, but then I didn't read all of the detailed instructions. I think there were very specific instructions on the sketches, and I think I missed some of them. I can't completely remember. This was it was in the 90s. So it was late 90s. I think, I don't know what was going through my head. I must have been overwhelmed with something else or something, but I just screwed that
kind of things did you miss though? Was it you missed scale stuff? Did you miss like it needed certain things in the
Yeah, it
illustration?
needed certain things in the illustration, like specific things in the
Okay.
illustration. They were just like little spot illustrations.
Yeah, but it's enough. I think
That's
the most I've ever done, like I've gotten close on a couple of deadlines, but the most I've ever sort of screwed up that was like I felt really bad about was I did all the sketches for something in the totally wrong proportion, and it was an editorial piece, so there was like a relatively quick turnaround time, and I went through and just missed, and so like everything had to be redone from scratch basically because there was no way to like make it work in a different proportion, and I felt horrible, and it's a guilty conscience thing where it's like to this day I'm just like, oh, how could I have paid attention?
Those are the ones you never forget, like the ones that like just yeah. That's the one.
Honestly, you know what it was, and I figured it out later, is they gave me the dimensions but they didn't say what was width and what was height, but it was from a designer who works in InDesign, and it always starts with width and its height is your second one, and I just went the other direction and screwed it up, but it meant that there was like, you know, I still made the deadline. I still made the deadline, but I still to this day feel like, oh man, I really bailed on that thing. And so I use it with students. So I'm like, you cannot mess this up. You got to pay attention to all these details, because if you miss them, that's going to be a pain later on in life.
Definitely. Like, I think with I did a lot of educational work, and those have so many instructions and details. So, and even when I'm like, when I think I'm ready to turn in sketches, I always go over it all again. You know, I don't do any educational now, but when I was doing them, I remember just being so like, I just made a point to be very particular about those details, because I always found that the feedback was always, oh, this detail was missed. And it's like, when I think that I've gotten them all, there's usually something.
Well, I mean, they don't have to be accurate if they're educational. You don't want to make dumb kids out there because you.
Yeah, exactly. It'd be all my fault to make them all really pretty dumb.
Oh shoot, what was I going to ask? There was something I was going to ask that was a follow up. Oh man, my brain just went kaput there. With
deadlines. But I have to say, I think with all my deadlines, I've made all my deadlines. But I always found that if there was an issue with it, I always called ahead of time to make sure and got approved if I needed it pushed. But I never really missed one. Because I know working in comics, I worked with and I worked on the coloring end, and I had to work with a lot of other artists. And I remember there were some new artists that were pretty notorious for being late all the time. So I pride myself on not being late and not being,
I just, I'm waiting to find out pricing on some books that I got, and it would mean that I potentially have like 2 to 3 books happening at the same time. 2 of them being board books, so they're not as laborious,
right?
Or don't have the longevity. It's not to say they're not hard to do. They are definitely hard to do, but it doesn't have the same like length of time to work on them. And I'm even now I'm like, okay, I hope these line up in a way that I don't have to have that conversation of like, oh, I'm not gonna make it.
Yeah, same. I know that feeling.
And I know it's built in, like the publishers give you time and whatnot. I just don't want to have that conversation because I feel guilty. I don't want to be a rule breaker. Well, I want to be a rule breaker, but I don't want to be a rule breaker on that.
Not that way.
Yeah. I want to challenge them in other ways. So tell me a little bit about sort of this come to God moment with realizing illustration was the path. Obviously, like I understand the idea that you don't want to sew and you don't want to, you want to put your time into something that really like feels important to you. But obviously that's a big leap of faith to make when you've already put in potentially years in your schooling to all of a sudden say, hey, you know what, I'm gonna do this other thing. Right. And can you tell me a little bit about sort of the challenges, or not necessarily that I need the collegial, well, I had to transfer credits from this to that. Right. But were there challenges that really came in as far as like who you are as a person, as an artist, as, you know, how did you sort of manage that transition without feeling like you're giving up something along the way?
Yeah, that was definitely that was a big deal decision. And I remember presenting it to my parents, you know, and I was lucky. I was one of the lucky kids that didn't have to deal with student loans, because for my parents and my father especially, education was like number one. Like he was so important that, you know, when you go to art school, you have to buy supplies. And my dad gave me a stipend monthly, and it was this tiny stipend. I mean, I think he was giving me like $100 a month.
Yeah.
It was,
which doesn't go far in an art school.
No. I mean, I was in Brooklyn, but still, even more so actually, because you have to, like, you know, go out of your way to get to New York City sometimes, especially at night, when you don't want to take the really scary like train. But you know, I remember I had to get a job like my second or third year or somewhere, or in the summer, and but during my time there, like when I was still studying, like he was like, what are you doing? You don't want to do that because you have to focus on your studies. I'm like, but it costs money for me to like buy supplies, especially in fashion. I was really lucky with fashion because, oh shoot, this is moving. Because when I was doing the internship, I got a lot of free fabric. So that was like almost taking care of the fashion stuff. But when I was when I was doing illustration, it was a different story. So I had a job my third year when I was in illustration. Yeah. But it was like, I don't know, what was you know, it was a big decision to give up, you know, more, like, you know, money towards the tuition, and you know, and this woman that I was working for in the fashion industry, she was like, you know, her boss, she's like, she was like, her boss was this big fashion person in the industry, and she, you know, she at some point was once the president of the what is it called, the fashion, what is it called, that big guild that they have at the you know, the CFDA.
Yeah.
And like, she was kind of a big deal, and she's like, you know, she never remembers interns' names, and she really likes you. And I'm like, yeah, but she was very, like, this woman was like very pro education and fashion, so she really was. She even like was our MC for our fashion show because I invited her. She was just like very gracious, but I felt like I was giving a lot up. Yeah. So it was definitely a big deal to switch. Yeah, I think also, I think that the people made it worse. I didn't have the stomach for it. Yeah. I think you kind of had to be a certain kind of person to survive in it. I think you had to be really, like, not care about all those hits, like the verbal abuse, and there was a lot of like, just is very catty.
I've heard things like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of personality and then the people that shows up.
Yeah. And you know, even the people I went to school with, you know, I had trouble getting along with a lot of them, but I tried not to make it about that. I reminded myself it can't be because of this. This is temporary, you know. It's temporary. I'm not going to be in school with them for a while, but it was indicative of how the industry operated too, just the general attitude.
Jumping to the illustration, was there, obviously your parents originally had like or at least I got the impression at this point that your parents saw that as like, okay, this has some commercial output. Mm-hmm. When you went to them with the illustration thing, was there an immediate pushback of like, how is this applicable? Or did you have enough in your...
No, like I really didn't know what I was going to do with it, but I was exploring like the publishing world. I was doing an internship with a small publishing company. So I was trying to figure out ways to make it viable, you know, outside just illustration. So Like I was aware there were other avenues to some degree, you know, but I didn't know what those were going to be. I really didn't know. I was really clueless. I was 20, and I feel like, so I felt when I think back at that time, I felt really clueless. I was like, I mean, I think that was my biggest fear about switching to illustration. I wasn't sure how I was going to make money.
Well, it's one of those things where like even today, or not today, but I guess Tuesday, I had students who were saying like, my parents are already, you know, they're second semester seniors, so there's obviously this question makes sense, but the parents are coming at them like, what's your job? Have you applied for jobs? Have you done this thing?
Right.
Freelance illustration doesn't have this like studio base that some other industries do. And I'm like, okay, you got to have these conversations with them about the realistic nature of the industry that you're walking into,
right?
And that it's not the same as a business that has a steady, you know, constant flow of jobs. You might have a month where nothing, and you might have a month where you have too much, and then you might have, you know, you might have to take on weird jobs in the meantime. And I always that idea of like how to approach your parents. Talk to them about the reality of the situation of like, I don't know where this is exactly going, but this is what feels right, is such a challenging thing to address for a lot of artists, even outside of illustration. Just the idea of like, you know, the notions that the world has about the art can be such challenging sort of, or can be a challenge to your psyche. Let's put it that way. So, but then when you started getting work, I assume they kind of like, oh, this all makes sense. And they, not that they quieted down, not like they were uproarious at that point, but I assume that they sort of like said like, oh, we see the how this all connects and that you're happy, maybe.
Right. Well, so, you know, I kind of had a partner in crime because at the time I had a very serious boyfriend who then eventually became a fiance very early on. And then right after college, I got married. It was really nuts, but that, he was an illustration major also, but he was a year ahead of me. But he was in the comic book field. So he was like, he had this idea like, hey, you know, we can use Photoshop and you know, there's coloring. He was doing like, he was already working in comics as a hand colorist. And then at some point, he thought of this idea of, I think there was a small startup studio that was kind of doing it to a small degree, doing coloring comic books. And then he kind of learned and then adapted it. And then, so one of my first jobs was that I did was for Marvel, and it was just coloring Spider-Man.
Cool.
Yeah. Okay. But the funniest thing about it is, and I was in my my dorm. I remember I had my graduation present for my parents was a Power Mac 7200, I think it was.
Okay.
It was a whole setup. It was so fancy at the time. But I think there was like 14 megabytes of memory.
Yeah.
I think. I don't remember. I mean, gigabytes did not exist. And
this was the era of jazz drives and
no, before this was even
before
before jazz.
Okay.
It was like SideQuest.
Okay, gotcha.
And then and I just remember my computer crashed twice. I lost it just trying to save it. I lost because of the what is it called, the cache. Yep. Like that would get filled up like in 2 seconds. So any complex task you do, which could be a cut and paste, it was just it would fill up and then it would just and I'd forget that the bigger issue was that I would forget to save everything I did. Like, so I think by the time like I'd be working on it for like a half hour or like an hour.
And then boom. You're gone.
And then I'd save, and then it won't save, and then I'd be devastated.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Horrible. But I think I was working on it for long. It was like several hours because it was so slow. So that's what I remember, at least.
But now, was this boyfriend / fiance, and I don't mean to pry, but I'm prying anyways. Is that your husband now?
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay. The way that you phrased that, I was like, there's some. Okay, I just didn't know if your husband was the comic.
No, so I say he was my first husband.
Gotcha.
But it was a long, So and then we had started. So from that we started coloring comic books. After I graduated, I did what's it called? So we started doing these jobs here and there, like for Marvel, and then mostly their advertising department, and then we did some books for Acclaim Comics at the time. It was like, I don't know if you're familiar with any of
I do.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah.
And they used to be Valiant, so they bought Valiant Comics, and so what they were trying to do is that they want to brand all of those characters under the Acclaim mask.
So wait, like Exo Manowar, and I'm trying to think all the different ones.
Yeah.
Hot Fighter.
Bloodshot.
Yeah.
Magnet. Robot Fighter.
I feel like there weren't a lot of people that read Valiant comics.
Makers.
I was one. I was one of those Valiant comic people.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
You were doing stuff for me. You were making the stuff for me.
Whoa, that's pretty cool. Yeah. Wait, when were you reading them?
This would have been I read them before Acclaim.
Okay.
So I was I'm gonna guess like maybe early to mid 90s.
Okay. Yeah. No, so Acclaim was Acclaim in mid 90s.
Yeah.
Right. You said early to mid 90s. So yeah, Valiant, early 90s was when they were, and I think that's when my just dropped my pencil. My ex-husband was interning for them at the time, so he did a lot of interning there, and then I think at some point, well, long story short, Acclaim was looking for one coloring house to do all of their books, but and all of their books were being colored by in-house hand colorists. And so they knew, like my trace is moving all over the place, so I don't know where these are landing. But anyway, I might just do the rest of them by hand because I just need like a map.
Yeah, this is graphite transfer for anybody who know what you're doing.
Yeah.
What's that? I was gonna say it tells you what era of illustration. I do the same thing. I do graphite transfers, and I feel like if I say that to students now, like, oh, you just do a graphite transfer, they go look at me with doe eyes, and I'm like, oh, you don't even understand. This is the way that it was always done. And you did it the official way. You actually have graphite paper. I just graphite on the back of the sketch. And go, this paper's old, and I've been reusing it because I know how it's kind of a pain to kind of get. So I just reuse it, and I've had it for a while. But yeah, it just goes to show, like, I'm a little bit rusty with using it because I'm also using a block, which is silly because usually I tape paper. Like I started this piece. I usually take a piece of paper and then tape it on a piece of cardboard so I can move it around. But I'm not really used to gessoing or taping block. The gesso paper. I understand the reason for it, and I understand like it will affect it. It's just funny that like watercolor paper you're buying watercolor paper which is like specifically made for watercolor, and then you're like covering it up with gesso. But again, if it makes beautiful images, what do I care? That's all that matters.
Exactly.
So obviously picture books come into play. at a certain point, and sort of you aim towards that. What was there a deciding factor in that? Was there something that like came
Oh
about,
yeah.
or was it
Well,
always?
actually, yeah, I have to rewind a little bit there. I had a teacher, David Pasalacqua. He said, "Why don't you try?" Because I at the time I wasn't sure what my focus was going to be because I was doing a lot of editorial in school. And he's like, "Why don't you try children's books?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, okay." So that's basically where it started.
That was it.
Yeah, that was it. And of course it clicked because, I guess I don't know why it wasn't even they didn't offer children's books at Pratt. They didn't offer it.
Really?
So yeah,
Huh.
they didn't. Of course, all the good stuff came after I graduated. They offered it the year after I graduated.
That happens in all of schooling. I deal with that every year where someone comes back the next year and they go, "Oh, you guys are running this class now? Cool."
Yeah.
That would have been nice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that would have been awesome. So like my schooling was the SCBWI.
Okay.
I was like, so Frida Gates was running the Metro New York SCBWI. She was fantastic. She was like, I felt like she was a mentor to some degree because she was actually my first official children's book or children's illustration job, which I did like a pamphlet illustration using pen and ink for one of their conferences.
Was that when you were in school that you were
No,
doing that, or was that?
I did that after school.
Okay.
That was.
I was gonna say, man, you were doing a lot of work while you were in school. It sounds. Okay. And then was it just an immediate like this absolutely connects? Like, I mean, obviously jumping from fashion to illustration, there had to have been some sort of like some aha moment that we heard about. But was the same thing when you jumped into Kidlit?
You mean the aha moment?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think, well, the aha moment was when he suggested it, and it was kind of like, that was a light bulb moment. I mean, I felt like for him, it's like, you just do that. I feel like he would suggest it to anyone,
Okay.
But for me, even regardless of whether or not it was just kind of like this one-off for him, it was just kind of something he suggests to everyone. It really clicked with me because when I was a kid, I loved picture books. I don't know why I never thought, oh yeah, I could do that. I don't know why. I never kind of equated the two. I don't know why. So, and I had my favorites growing up, and then, I used to, A Snowy Day was one of my favorites. Okay. Corduroy, Miss Nelson is Missing. And that was, I'm forgetting, who's the author? How dare, I'm forgetting the name of the writer illustrator who did Miss Nelson is Missing.
I feel like I know that. I mean, obviously I know Corduroy and I know.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, but I feel like the Miss Nelson one I've heard of, but I don't know if I've ever, like, I couldn't picture it in my head.
Yeah.
Now. I can picture the style of it based on the title.
Uh-huh. I
can fully picture the style of it because it has one of those titles of that era.
Yeah.
Sort of like anywhere between like late 60s to like early 80s kind of aesthetic.
Right.
It's what I envision.
Watercolor, but really fun, really dark, black lines. It's really a little bit crude. When I looked back at it, I looked at it again. And what was interesting is I didn't realize it because when I was illustrating, I noticed that when I look at A Snowy Day, I'm like, oh, there are elements to that book. I didn't realize that the reason why I loved it so much was I used it in my own illustration, that kind of off kilter, there was I never really used proper perspective.
Yeah.
So nor did I really want to really learn. I just found it tedious.
But I
always
intentionally throw off my perspective because once you start doing accurate, then all of a sudden you have to keep it accurate.
Yes, and it's annoying. But but anyway, I also think that here I'm struggling with this dumb window, but because I'm thinking, okay, I got to do this accurately, but I don't. So I'm just going to ignore that right now. So just don't even look at that.
Yeah, you have to mess with it.
Yeah, I'll do it in the paint layer. But so let's see. So I think then I realized, that makes more sense. Stories and I think I can you know, I like this idea of being able to produce more images and like really focus my my output in that sense, in story, not, rather than, because I really struggled with editorial. I found that really challenging to do.
Yeah.
It was so much more natural using story. So yeah, so I pursued that, and I did like, one of them was my own story, and then another one was like a retelling of so for senior year I did like 3 books, but like I didn't do like the full, you know, 16 spread book, but I did excerpts
Yeah.
for like 3 books.
Pages.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
For my senior thesis. And so from that I got some interest, and that's how it started the ball rolling. In my senior thesis, there were, you know, art directors that would come and look at the work, and then that's how I started staying in touch. And then I started, then somehow I learned about the SCBWI. Someone told me about it. Someone at Pratt must have told me about it. And then, and so I started keeping lists of editors, and then I started doing portfolio drop-offs. So then in that time period, I was doing portfolio drop-offs. I was also doing comic book coloring because it was really good bread and butter.
So let me ask you a question, and this is sort of a pointed question a little bit, because I have a feeling I know the answer before you say it. But when you were in school, because it sounds like we were relatively close in the years that we were in school. Do you feel like now I'm teaching all these professional practice classes, and I'm doing all these to like prep these students for walking out the door, whatnot. But I'm wondering, when you were in school, did you have, looking back on it, do you feel like you got a lot of prep work that basically, you know, like, here's how you make it in the industry?
No, zero.
Okay.
Absolutely no.
Yeah.
Zero.
That's what I'm wondering, because I think that maybe they did some of that when I was in school, but it was very limited, whatever they did. And so like, it's hard for me to look at it and go, yeah, I totally got this information in the way that it's expected now in sort of the collegiate world. But there was a lot of having to figure stuff out on your own.
Yeah, it was a lot of that. And
you mentioned like finding SCBWI that you don't know exactly, like, you know, how, or like the you didn't have classes and this stuff, you just had to figure it out, kind of thing. Feels very
pretty much
true. To
going to the conferences and learning from other illustrators that would go to the conferences. I learned a ton. And and then they had like illustration, like it's not the same now like it was back then. They did these really great conferences at Bank Street College. I mean, they had guests like Judy Bloom, you know, and like all the up and coming, like all the editors would go. A lot of the mainstream, you know, main publishers the art directors and editors would go to these conferences, and you know, and these conferences were like $79. I remember it was so cheap. It was so specific, right? I just remember. Just the only reason why that stands out to me is because they also, like right now, that they do these a New York conference and a California conference, and those are these giant conferences that are like really expensive. I think I went to one of those, and I feel like I know a lot of my friends have been to them like more than once, but I got a lot of my information because it's the same information, but it was more intimate. Actually, I felt lucky because the smaller conferences that were in New York City had all the same information, and it was more intimate with the people who were actually working in the industry. So it was great. And, you know, we would have at the Society of Illustrators every year, they would have a portfolio or illustration conference. And so they'd have like about 15 or so editors and art directors come to look at our portfolios, and there'd be talks and discussions with agents, and then after a while I found that they became repetitive, so I just started just working on my portfolio and just doing drop-offs and just trying to figure out a way you know, to get noticed.
It sounds similar. I mean, like when I started out in the industry, and I didn't start out back in that day, but 10, 12 years ago, those conferences seemed like they were like the ticket. And it's not to say that they aren't now for anybody, but I think for me, they don't have the same charm they once did. Partially because I feel like I'm sort of in a bit of a what do I want to say, like, not that I'm like in the swing of it, not like everything's perfect, but I just feel like the value in them is, I think, more directed towards people trying to start or to make a name.
Yeah.
I feel like, not to say that I'm like a big name, nor do I want to be in that ballpark at this point, but
it's like people who are starting out, like,
yeah, just learning the ropes of how the industry works. And once you know that, I don't need to go do a workshop on sort of like how to talk to an agent, because I have an agent. So it's like, you know.
Yeah. And then, but see, for some reason, I do know a lot of people that still go to them. And I think it seems to me that they go because, but I don't know if this is correct. They go, you know, to network or to just see each other, or just a way to socialize and to kind of be up to speed with what's going on now. But I think when I was doing the regional show or regional conferences, they started to get repetitive, but there were many, we had lots of them, and, you know, they were really great. But then I remember when I decided, okay, I'm going to do a national one. I'm just going to try and see if it's any different. And so I went for the first time to the big New York one, and I had finished the Billy Goat's book, for my first book with Athenaeum. And I met my art director at the big show.
All of a sudden,
and I didn't meet her at the offices. I met her at SEBWI. I'm like, oh, I'm forgetting her last name. She saw me and she's like, oh, what are you doing here? She's like, I was like taken aback by that, like that statement. I think her impression was like, people who were there were people who haven't been published yet.
Yeah.
So that was her impression of yeah.
The last time I went, it was not for, I mean, I went for less of a art thing, and I went about writing. Like, okay, if you have any workshops on writing, I'm going to take those, and or idea building, or like how to market yourself for schools, and things that were like tangential
that makes sense,
to it. But primarily, one of the things I went for was just to talk to people and to hang out with my agent, and to, you know, the people that showed up that were art directors or artists and whatnot. That was more of the value for me. And again, I'm not trying to disparage the idea of like the conference. I know plenty of people that are like, they're chapter heads and things of the sort, and what they do is lovely. But I also think that it really depends on where you are in your career and your expectations and what you want to get out of those conferences, whether it's worth spending the money, especially now that it's gone to these, like, there's two big conferences. And if you're going in person, like, how much money do you want to spend in those situations versus like spending on smaller workshops or things of that sort?
Yeah.
Now you're not in New York City.
No, I'm in the Hudson Valley, so north of that. Just I'm not far, in like half an hour by train, or 40 minutes by train, and like 45 minutes by car.
Yeah, it was the idea of just like access to some of those things and access to the publishers is
great. Yeah,
probably huge, because you can hop into the city.
I could, but it's funny, I haven't. You know, like, I think it's because so many of them are remote.
Yep.
Yeah, they don't bother.
Well, it's the same thing. Like it's a half an hour for me to get into Boston, but I just don't ever really want to go in there. Like, I moved out of that area because I didn't want to be in the city, and so now it scares me. Now I don't drive in the situation.
Yeah, isn't that funny how that works? Like, the less you do things like that, the more like agoraphobic you become.
Mm-hmm.
Very.
I mean, I used to love subway and stuff, and like, no, I don't want to go on the subway now. And it's not that I'm afraid of the people, it's just like the hassle.
Right.
Like, I'd rather pay extra for parking downtown than have to find a subway station and not have to pay a crazy fee. And it's the old person in me who's just like, I don't want to deal with these young hip people that think they're cool and can live in a city of some.
Oh, the vibe is so different from when I totally obliterated my drawing. I just noticed, but that's okay. I can kind of see it.
Oh, is it because you just went over and like
I'm such a novice.
Yeah, you lost all the original.
So what I used to do is I didn't want to do this, but I mean you can still lose it. But I used to put like to preserve the drawing, I would put matte medium or like seal it
clear
first, but
or something that would
seal
that thing up. That's that. Wait, did you use a water soluble pencil?
No, the graphite paper wasn't so great.
Yeah.
I don't use, so that's what I usually use. I just
using
usually
a material that would negate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that I use, part of it I drew with the Prismacolor, and it was fine. It was the graphite transfer paper that was no good. But I can kind of see, sort of. So we'll see. It's okay. It'll be okay.
You'll learn these things, and you'll learn to cherish the idea that now you have no guide marks to go by, and you just have to figure it out. That's fine. That's living life right there.
Living on the edge.
That's my whole, like, messing up is the best part of illustration in my mind, and so the more I mess up, the better. So tell me a little bit about sort of. I know that your agent is Karen Wiseman, right?
Yeah. Yep. We have a new relationship. It's very new.
Oh, really?
She was my agent starting August of last year.
Oh, I didn't realize. I thought you went back years at least. But
I was initially with Mela MB Artists for 15 years. I realized I needed more editorial support because she's more of an art. Mela is more of an art agent. Yep. So I just kind of learned, kind of in a meandering way, that I would really like more editorial support. I could get that if I had more of a literary agent, because just in talking with some of my friends who have literary agents, so I finally decided, because I really wanted to make a go of more writing, because I felt I had, I feel like I had that more of that luxury now. Like I didn't have to just take every single job that came my way.
Yep.
Since circumstances have changed, and before I was like working full time and freelancing, so I was just like on overdrive for a while. So I switched to ABLA so that I could get some more support with writing and help with that, because that's not my first strength. I mean, but so when I spoke to Karen, she was really she seemed very excited. I learned of her through a friend of mine, someone who I worked with in comic books, someone who was a freelancer, someone I had hired when I was doing coloring. So way back when I was doing comics, our venture turned into this business, and we were afforded that big, what do you call it? The I don't know if we even actually had a contract, but they gave us all of the books to do, and they allowed us grow, like they time to grow, so that we can then build our stable of artists. Because it was at a time when digital coloring was brand new. And like, and so it was also, I think a claim also said, okay, can you train all of these hand colorists that used to work for us? That's
Okay.
basically what we did. So we took everyone who colored for them by hand,
And taught
we taught them how to use Photoshop and color. And then and that was like a lot of them, but not all of them. So, and some of them just became recommendations through other friends. And I think Mike worked in comics, and from what I remember, and Mike was a Cavallero. So he was the one who recommended Karen to me, and she represents Mike.
Okay.
So yeah, and so so he's like, well, whenever you're ready, I will, I can give you Karen's name. And then I'm like, sure. And then one day I was like, I think I'm ready. And so I gave her a call, and then I think I was itching for just more, I guess, having a little more control over the kind of work I was getting. And I didn't want to just take the next educational project. So I wanted to do work that, I thought was more fulfilling to me. And I didn't always want to do other people's work, although I don't mind it. I love, I still love illustrating books, and if the story is like really compelling to me. So yeah, so that's the main reason why I switched.
Let me ask you a question about it, because there's always this thought in my mind of like, there's people, because I'm at ABLA too, and I have Jen Lofgren, that's my agent of choice in this. But I've always had these like people that I know where I'm like, oh man, this person really should have an agent. And in fact, I just worked with a mentee who it was, in my opinion, great, and really needs to find someone that can rep them. But I also am hesitant because I don't want to like reach out and be like, hey Jen, you got to hire this.
Right.
Like I'm always, is that my place? I don't know what I'm supposed to do. And I'm wondering, like, what was it like when your friend mentioned Karen? Was that something that, like, was there pressure? Did he get clearance ahead of time? What was the? Because obviously, he put in a good word for you. There's no reason why. It's not like he just said, "Here's the name."
Right. Yeah. Yeah. He said that. I think he did. I guess he spoke to her. 1 second. I think my dog is asking to come in, and I think my husband forgot about it.
I thought you were about to follow up with, and I think my husband is.
Yeah, Bessie's out here. No. Bessie,
We can hear the conversation.
For Bessie. My big pup was scratching at the door.
How big is the big pup? If that the one that you showed me was the small.
Oh, she's right here. Here, I'm gonna let me here. Bessie, come here. So, let me switch you over for a sec.
This is called Show the Dog Hour.
Wait, let me unplug.
We need these moments. There's a delay on my end, so it's going to take a second.
Bessie, come here. Come here.
Let's see how big this.
Bessie, come here.
Oh,
do you see her?
Yeah, that is a big dog. Was that an 80-pound dog?
I don't know how much she weighs. She's going to the vet tomorrow, so I'll get a more accurate weight tomorrow.
Yeah.
She's kind of light. She's gonna go in my trash. I have to make sure my she's very, very sweet, but she's also very skittish. She's scared. She's scared of the unknown. Which is like everything.
It's funny seeing big dogs now. Like we used to have a relatively big dog at about like 70 pounds, roughly, somewhere in there. A sort of dog that looked like a Rhodesian Ridgeback.
Oh yeah.
Now we have two little Chihuahua mixes.
Oh.
And so see big dogs. I'm like, dog is big. And in reality, like, your dog isn't big. It's just,
No.
it's a dog that some scale to
The
it.
dog's dog.
I'm not used to.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
I know what you mean.
challenging for me to see a dog like that. I'm like, oh, why is that dog so huge? The dog's a giant. You need to calm that down. Okay, we're
so big.
Okay, so you get Karen Wiseman. Was it
Yeah.
was it a big conversation there, or because
Yeah, so
hadn't
well, so
before?
my friend didn't really tell me the whole conversation he had with her, but when I spoke with her, like I didn't know, like when he introduced me, he sent me an email that said, "Hey, this is Kristin, Karen. This is Kristin. This is my favorite person." Like he just like these are, you know, it was very like it was literally like a 2-sentence introduction. I'm just like, Mike, what does she know about me? Like what? Like I have no idea. So I think from what I understand, he might have had another conversation with her. And so she's like, great, let's set up. She set up a time to chat.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
that's how the ball started rolling. So and so then when we spoke, it was a really nice conversation. And you know, I talked about what I wanted, what my goals were, and it just seemed to just flow really naturally. And one of the things which I thought was really cool was I remember being at the library like a couple months before, and I pulled out this graphic novel called El Defoe. And I think this was like it's an older book. It's I think from 2016, 2017, something like that.
Okay.
And it was about a girl who, the characters were rendered like rabbits, like kind of like an animal. They have these ears, and but they weren't human. So I thought that was really clever. But she, the character, lost her hearing at a very young age, and it's really a coming of age story about how she dealt with this, you know, being deaf and in the 80s. Like it was very specific because it was at a time when there was kind of like limited technology in that arena, I guess. And and how she had to carry around this heavy pack, and how she was made fun of sometimes depending on the situation. And then she had you know, and so it was just a coming of it. Yeah. What's that?
I said, the 80s when people were.
Oh yeah. Yeah, exactly. And so it was funny. It was like when I was telling her about like how I had this idea for a graphic novel, and I read that book, and I want to tell my story again. Like I had this idea for a while, and I've been sitting on it forever. First it was a picture book idea, then I decided I wanted to turn it into a graphic novel, and then because my childhood. In my childhood, I was around 11. I had been diagnosed with ALL, which was acute lymphocytic lymphoblastic leukemia.
Wow.
And so that was like a, you know, in 6th grade of all, like, I was in new school. It was just like a weird time in my life. It was just one, you know, and I've been wanting to write about it and some of the funny things that were happening at that time, and really interesting things because it was the 80s. And so when I read that graphic novel, I was telling her, you know, I have this idea, and I read this graphic novel called El Defoe, and that kind of maybe want to dust mine and bring that back to life. And she's like, well, that's funny because I represented that book. And I'm like, what? So I was like kind of fangirling because it was a really great book, and I was just like, no way. And so I felt like it was kismet, like when we were talking. Yeah.
It's meant to be.
Yeah.
Bees in a pod.
Yeah.
Were you at the other agency at that time, or did you drop that agent beforehand? Because most of the time you have to you can't be agented if you're out there querying.
Well, so no, yeah, it was it was basically an inquiry. So then I was agented. So I said, you know, so I'm still with Mela, and I want to have a conversation with her. You know, and she was just like, yeah, do it, whatever, you know, I'm interested. I'd love to represent you. And, you know, whatever you need to do, I'll be here. basically is what she said. And so she just basically gave me whatever time I needed to.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
Is that?
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, then I had a conversation with Mela, and it was a very good, mutual thing, so she understood, and she's like, yeah, I definitely can't. I mean, I think this is a good step for you. She's very supportive.
Yeah. I mean,
so
it'd be, I can't imagine an agent would say like, no, you're
right.
not allowed. But also,
right.
everybody wants the best for the other people, and if it's not a perfect fit. It's the idea of like, I did not know, and I've said this on here quite a few times, that early on when I started out in the industry, I had no idea that people switched agents as much as they do. I'm not saying like it's like every other day or anything of the sort, but just the idea of I have this assumption: once you have an agent, you have that agent for life.
Right.
That's that. And then I find out that like, yeah, sometimes just people go different directions. And, it's like relationships.
Exactly.
Sometimes you gotta move on for the health of everybody in that situation.
Right.
And so
that was the other thing, is like I felt bad turning down certain jobs all the time. Like I felt like I was just like and that, so it made me feel also bad when every time Mela would offer me something, can you do this? And I'm like, no, I don't really want to do that. So it's more like want to versus like, I would try to have this conversation in my head. Well, it's only, this will only last this long. But then I would just, when I'm doing it, I'm like not happy. So, do it, especially if it's like another educational project that wasn't thoroughly exciting, but I would still like, I always, it's funny because with educational projects, I always thought them as an opportunity to really like do neat things, like cool things, because like no one saw them except for the kids who got the books. But I always use it as an opportunity to, although you're still kind of limited because they also expected you to kind of conform to certain
standards. Standards and
so
I mean, obviously your work is absolutely lovely, and then you jump into this world of like trying to write, and I know I'm struggling with it right now. I just sent some manuscripts to my agent, and I'm hoping, if she's watching, please, Jen, find a way to make them work. I have the problem of I am very like ADHD or ADD when it comes to manuscripts. I go back and I'm like, okay, well, I'm already on this whole other thing, and like I don't dive back into them in the way that I probably should. But part of that is I am someone who likes variety. And then writing becomes a challenge. And I'm wondering, since this is a new realm for you, or at least it sounds like it's a new realm for you, what are the challenges that you're running into when it comes to trying to write? Do you have something out on submission at all right now?
No, no, like right now I'm rewriting something before it goes out for submission.
Okay. Gotcha.
So, and I have been pretty slow with it because same thing. It's like, but it's been out already before with my previous one. So I think my previous agent, but I'm doing a major rewrite on it. So the problem is also is like once you, like it's hard to revisit it in my brain. It's like, how do I make this like exciting again for my, like when I thought it was good, how do I do this so that I am excited about it again? So
how do I make the magic happen that happened 5 years ago?
Right.
And have is it hard? Like obviously writing is a difficult thing, but have you challenging the process, or have you gotten relatively easily in the sense of just like literally writing words? I don't mean like making it perfect, but just
right. Typing it.
Are you?
No, I feel it's funny because I think I approach each manuscript I try differently, but I'm trying to be more disciplined in my approach. I try to like with outlines and such, but I mean, truth be told, I've been writing since I started doing children's books, but I wasn't as vigilant about staying on top of it as, the illustration portion of it, for survival purposes. I was like, I cannot. Well, I mean, so the editor that I worked with on the Billy Goats book, she was actually going, like, the reason I got that book, but she initially contacted me because she wanted to publish one of my stories. And then for some reason we got it into the editorial. We got it through I forget what they call it, like the round there, you know, when they make the rounds with the other editors. They had some the other editors had some issues with the story, and I think at some point it was like I couldn't get it to where they wanted it to be. Like they weren't satisfied with this. It was such a crazy story, but for some reason they wanted the ending to make sense the way reality works. But the story was like
Actually real.
It was like far from reality. I'm like, why does this have to make so much sense?
Oh, okay. Yep.
When the story itself is so unrealistic. It was like a baby that could talk, kind of thing. This was before Family Guy. You know, it was like a baby that was like
Wait.
it was like a sibling rivalry story.
There's a time before Family Guy? What was that like? I'm not the biggest Family Guy fan.
Oh, me neither.
Yeah.
Me neither. I don't. That's funny because so I have another story about that. Like I also did, like, in that time I was doing comics, I was also doing a little bit of animation pitching. You know, because it was like everybody had a production company in the 90s. Like, I don't know, it was like it was a really good time for creatives, I think, because of the internet was new, and you know, it was like the what do you call it? It was just like it was an explosion of technology, and it was just, everything was new, and so
Lots of startups.
Yeah, a lot of startups, right? And so, you know, and a lot of companies, including publishing companies, had a production arm to their companies, like including Golden Bucks, where they were taking their characters and trying to turn them into TV shows, or at least like some, yeah. And so I had a friend at Acclaim who had an agent, and he's like, "Hey, do you have any children?" He's like, "Hey, I have an agent here. Do you have any children's stories? Do you want to pitch?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And so I kind of drew one up, and then I think I had like a painting, and I decided I was gonna draw a story out of it, and then.
Are you saying that you said yes and you didn't actually have anything?
Right, exactly.
So you're a big liar.
Yes, I'm a big liar.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was an opportunity, so I was like, I can draw something up. Yeah. And but they ended up really liking it, so I went out and did some pitching to a bunch of places. And so but fast forward, you know, fast forward, when I was working full time, there was this like open call to pitch to Fox, because they were looking for a replacement for The Simpsons. Yep. Can you imagine? And I think it was Family Guy was being shown every once in a while. Yep. Instead, I did not like. Yep. I'm sorry, I didn't like that show. Not to offend fans of Family Guy, but I did not like the show. It didn't have the same heart.
Go ahead and offend, because that show is problematic in more ways than one. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and so I think that Fox had the same feeling about it. My guess is because they were looking for a replacement that wasn't Family Guy, because they were in the interim, they were playing Family Guy as a, I can't remember how they were doing it, but they like some days they were showing Family Guy instead of The Simpsons, and I think they just wanted a fresh show. And so I submitted one of my ideas about an intern in the fashion business, and this was before Devil Wears Prada. Thank you very much. And it was, you know, and so it was an open call, and I think they chose like 49 people out of like 3,000. And so I flew out there and pitched, the show, and of course, I mean, nothing ever came of any of it. It was this weird, like, quiet venture that Fox did, because when I went to, it was a blizzard when I went to fly out there, and I didn't think I was going to make it. It took me like 3 hours to get to Newark Airport. But I tried to call, like, it was called Pitchorama. They called it Pitchorama, and at the time Futurama was on the air, and I tried to call the studio saying, hey, can I speak to someone whoever's hosting Pitchorama? And then they transferred me to Futurama. I don't think anyone knew what the heck what this thing was.
What
no
the person was doing.
So I was like, but I eventually made it, thank God, like by the skin of my teeth. Like I made it. It was like 30 minutes before they boarded, but it was a crazy blizzard. I couldn't believe it. But anyway, yeah. So I thought that was a funny story, because like they were really trying to replace Family Guy, but I don't think they ever found it. I guess they never found
what's another Seth MacFarlane show. That's what.
Yeah.
That's
what is it? I don't even watch regular TV anymore, so I don't even know.
We don't either.
Yeah.
I have no idea what's out there for regular shows.
Yeah.
Unless they've been like put on Hulu as a streaming thing. I'm not going to see regular TV at this point. I mean, it sounds to me like you've had a wild and crazy time. It sounds to me like a wild and adventurous sort of career in a multitude of avenues. You feel like you've gotten to a point where, and I don't mean this in a negative light, but that you've sort of settled in on what you like to do? Or do you think there's still a lot that is out there that you're like, oh, this is going to be around the corner next week? And you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Do you feel like
I know what you mean.
Where you've sort of locked in?
Yeah, it's funny because I think about that. Like how every once in a while I think, oh, do I still want to be doing picture books? I still, it's the one thing that's been consistent throughout the years, the one pursuit that hasn't changed.
Yeah.
But I think it's the one pursuit that I find fulfilling of all the ones that I've done. And it seems to, what's the word? It tends to, for me, it tends to evolve into this, I find different ways that it becomes more fulfilling and different, like, especially with given everything, like there's been like a lot of the books I've been doing, especially during the pandemic and right before it, or mostly after, a lot of social emotional books have come out, and I found like this new purpose in a way. Like I'm loving how these books that never existed when I was a kid they're more plentiful, and all of the multicultural books, the stuff like, a lot of the Filipinos, the Mommy King that I did was like amazing to do, because I was offered that book, and I'm assuming they offered it to me because I was Filipino, because I am Filipino, but also that when I told my mom about it, it was crazy, because she was like more excited about that story than any other book I had done, because she knew all about it. She knew this restaurant because it was based on, the story is,
yeah.
I don't know if you've read it,
yeah.
but
in the back of the book, there's a whole thing that you
wrote
that thing in the back of the book, but the whole thing about like how your mom, it was a restaurant that your parents got engaged or talked about getting married in.
Yeah, exactly. And so when she told me about that, I'm like, what? so it's like I feel like it I find that it continues to kind of be the gift that keeps on giving, the work that keeps on giving.
Yeah.
For me. So but and I still explore other avenues just for creative fulfillment, like just doing fine artwork, and wanting to explore just more personal stuff. Yeah. And so, yeah, I don't know. Maybe, I'll get my law degree one day. I don't know. Who knows? I'm just kidding.
What? Oh, okay. You threw me for a loop with that one. I'm like, oh, are you? So let me ask a question. This is sort of a pointed question. Again, I'm not trying to age any of us,
That's
but
okay. Age away.
yeah. Okay. So why are you so old? No, the idea of as we move along through our artistic careers, I tend to look and say, like, there are things that when I started out, I had this desire to be this specific artist, or I had this desire to somehow live up to this like idea of what an illustrator is. And as time goes on, the more and more I look at what's going on and I go, I don't really care about that. I just want to make work that makes me happy.
Mm-hmm.
Or I want to make work that's fulfilling,
Yeah.
or, you know, whatever that argument is.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering that idea of, as you work on this stuff, do you feel that sort of pull towards like again, I mentioned at the beginning, at the top of the show, but that idea of being pulled towards your roots in a way of like, okay, let me go back to the things that really
Coming full circle,
yeah,
kind of thing.
are my core that I've been either not necessarily ignoring, but like have not been at the forefront, and let's put them, you know, let's give them a headlining show.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So you mean like with regard to the work itself, or just outside of that, or anything?
Anything and everything.
In general.
Like, I just, and maybe this is just like midlife crisis.
Yeah, no, but it's so funny that you're asking that, because I guess because we're in that same stage of life, and I feel like, and our, you know, our elders or our parents are, you know, are older, and we have to take care for them, and then, you know, there's all these other issues that come up, and
you're looking at longevity of like, how do I fit into this world, and what do I say, and, you know, the moves that I make now, are they being what do I want to say, like, not portrayed, but are they
relevant?
Yeah, am I who I envision in my head, or am I something else? And there's all these questions that go through my head now, and some of that may be literally midlife crisis. But I do think some of it also is just like, you evolve as an artist, and I'm at the stage where that evolution is happening in a method that sort of goes back to roots versus trying to expand. It's like, how do I pull back and sort of relive some of the fun days of my younger self.
Right.
Really depressing. I don't know. Yeah.
Well, you have kids. I don't know if that's possible. No. Let's see. Yeah, it's interesting, because I was thinking about that recently, believe it or not, or at least some like version of that. Because I feel like, because I can afford to do that right now, I'm not like, I think because a lot of my 30s and 40s was just on hyperdrive of, like, you know, the career, and then, you know, and my big thing was always making sure I had health insurance. Like, that was always a thing for me because of my history. And then, so that always required a job. So, or, you know, until Obamacare came out, which was like a godsend, but still it was expensive. And so for me, it was a hustle. And then I think when everything slowed down, I can stop and think. And now I feel like I'm at that place where, because I don't have to have that full-time job. And that feels like that is, these days, I feel like that's a luxury.
The thing about like the gig economy, and like how people are to have that ability to step back and say, like, I don't have to struggle every day.
Right. But then what's weird is that because I'm not doing that, there's a weird guilt, underlying guilt. I'm like, I need to be really busy right now. I need to be doing this, and this. So it's allowed me to kind of think, step back, and use and be more thoughtful in what I do. And I think, you know, one of the things I'm doing right now is I'm being more involved in my community. So I just joined like the what's called the art and placemaking committee in my town. And so we're trying to, get, we have this beautiful, we're kind of, I guess I guess I could tell you where I live, but I kind of don't.
No, don't tell me. Don't tell me.
No, I shouldn't say. But I think what I want to say is that just getting more involved in my community, which was really helpful, and feeling like connecting with other people has been huge, especially after COVID and with everything, with just social media. I have this pull to, probably partly why I'm also doing this and not digital. It's the need for the, what's the word? Like the stuff that you can touch.
The tactile.
And yeah, stuff. Yeah, that stuff it doesn't feel like it's abstract. It's kind of in the cloud.
Yeah.
Like meeting, like seeing people, making sure that I'm going to the gym and seeing people. I'm not working out at home, like just those kinds of choices make a difference. Because I could totally choose to like not go out at all, and it has an opposite effect. I think it's not great. I learn like human connection is huge.
I mean, that's been a challenge before the pandemic, even with most illustrators. They're just
they tend to be pretty reclusive. Yep. So it is work for me to do that, but then when I'm doing it, I'm like, oh, I'm so glad I did that.
I luckily have that outlet of school where like I just get to go interact with people, and now it's not always people that are my same age, and so they make fun of me for old or being not with it or hip, as the kids say nowadays, which they don't. I'm not skibbity.
No.
They don't say that yet in college, but it's.
Well, my kids are saying it, so
yeah.
That's the weird thing is my kids are at that age. I have 2 stepkids. And then I have my daughter who's 14.
Yeah.
So what's weird is that I feel like the way so in speaking even to the mentees that I've worked with, they kind of sound like my kids, like all my kids, all of them. And then I'm like, whoa, that's so weird. Because generationally, they're not that far in age.
No.
Wild.
Yeah.
It's wild.
They're what? Like, 14. You're talking that maybe 6 years.
Yeah.
Different.
Exactly.
That's not that much.
Oh,
and all of a sudden you got a bunch of weird college kids that are saying things that you don't understand. And that happens, as I said, on a regular basis for me. I forget what it was that they even said. There was something today that someone said that I was like, okay, sure. I just chalk it up to like, I'm never gonna be up to speed.
Right.
On whatever.
It's not, especially at this rate, like the internet rate, it's impossible. It's like it changes in 6 months.
They're too hip for me.
Yeah.
I've given up. I'm an old curmudgeon now. With the idea that you have, I don't know how old your step kids are, but I'm assuming they're what?
Staying like 8, like 10. One's turning 11 this year. Another one is my daughter's age. So the other one is 13, going on 14.
Past the picture book age though.
Yeah. But I knew them, I've known them since they were 4, so little. So they were picture book age when I knew them.
Did that have any sort of influence on you as far as the sort of, being in this industry, having kids that are in that sort of range? Has it changed your perspective now that they've sort of gotten out of that range? Like my kid is 11.
Mm-hmm.
So like now he's less into, well, not less into, he doesn't read picture books anymore. He reads like books that are mature and I don't know, whatever.
Oh, right.
But
like chapter.
Yeah. He's reading chapter books, things of the sort.
Yeah.
And now I feel like it's evolved me to a point where I'm starting to look at like other book types and go like, oh, maybe I can sort of jump out of picture books a little bit and try things. And it's not to say that like, I'm probably going to stay in picture books for a long time, but there is like, there was a difference for me of being the age and having a kid the age of picture books where it was just like every day, you know, you'd read to them before bed. Well, now he does his own reading. I don't do that really that much.
Right.
And
Right.
you, they're at that age now where like they've shifted, I assume. Like you said,
Yeah.
8-year-old was the youngest?
The 10-year-old. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So that's past picture books at that point.
Yeah.
Do you stay up to speed on picture books now, or are you sort of shifting as well?
Yeah, I think I would say I'm shifting, but I'm trying to make a point to kind of, when I go to the bookstores, to take a look around. Because that's how I used to do it. I just would go to this and stay there for like a couple hours and just look through all the books. And but to some degree, yeah, I think I do. And I think Instagram kind of helps with that. So because you follow a lot of those artists that are pretty popular in there, but also, I have been trying to pursue somewhat, like I'd like to do more book covers one day. Like I've done a couple, but just so I kind like, yeah, it's funny because my focus does change sort of with what my daughter, though she's kind of reading much older than, but not to brag because she's like but like I feel like, but when I do something, I'm like, hey, will you read this? She's like, and it's like too kid for her. I'm just fine.
Not War and Peace, Mama. Still has pictures. That's lame.
Yeah, that's so uncool. It should have blood and like
that. Yeah. That's not Sigma or something. I don't know what the other ones are.
Oh God, yeah. And every time I use those words, they're like, oh my God, they just want to hide.
Yeah.
It's the funny
thing. I know the words. I have no idea what any of them.
Yeah. How do you apply it? How do you use Sigma in the sentence?
Yeah. I think I haven't a clue on how Sigma works. And my son hates them because it's like, it's not his. He's not the kid that would like that stuff.
Well, good. Be glad.
Yes.
For that.
Yeah. I just realized how I want to make these trees. I'm gonna make wibble wobble trees. Sorry.
Oh, I know what you're making. I don't like what I'm doing right now, but it'll get there. I know it will. I usually go through this when I paint. This is the other thing about painting is like I go through this horrific stage where it's like it's just not where I want it to be at all.
I am deep in that right now of like it will produce fruit at some point, but right now it is funky.
It's not there yet.
That is a piece of bacon. I don't want a piece of bacon. I'm trying to figure out like the shape that I want for like some weird trees. Instead of doing just like standard trees, I'm trying is there a fun shape that I've never tried before? This doesn't matter because we're talking yeah. I don't know why I'm going into like get the load of this tree. Maybe I just that's what I do. Yes, there it is. Okay, I figured it out. Never mind. So
I'm just taking a look at what you're doing.
So far, it's the bridge.
Oh, nice.
It takes a long time to build the structure for these, like the amount of collage stuff that has to go down just to get the base structure. That's why I end up staying up until midnight doing these, and then
but it's fun.
Feel it the next day.
Oh,
that's
not
recovery day. What? Speaking of recovery, what is your work schedule?
Oh,
are you?
So I sleep until noon. I'm just kidding. I have to get up at like 7 now, and then I help my daughter out the door to catch the bus, and then I go have my breakfast, take care of the dog.
I don't need the full schedule. I need. What are you doing?
I'm trying to fill up my day.
Yeah. And then I go to the bathroom, and then we don't need that.
And then I think it's funny because it's not. I wouldn't say it's the same every day. Although I do better when I am on a routine.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I'm like I like to like list out everything I want to get done in the day. That way I can stick to it. And then I usually work on I like to like give myself about, I don't know, 2 or 3 hours of creating and painting. And then, you know, I have to work on writing every day, but I can't say I'm doing that every
Yeah.
day. And
Is that what,
I've got, sorry.
is that what your agent wants to hear? You're not?
Yeah, right. I should, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Karen, if you're listening to this after the fact, because I don't think Karen's on right now, but if you're listening after the fact, you gotta get on Kristin's case about this lax schedule.
Exactly. Well, I am signing on to do a book. I can't really say what it is yet, but so that I will be working on that, the research portion of it at least. And then so that's a new thing for me. And then I'm also doing this committee thing, like I'd say at least once I have to dedicate, I don't know, that at least an hour a week. That's not a lot. But you know, I think every day I've just been focusing on the writing and then trying to paint. I'm trying to transition my work. So I've been working on the painting a lot.
Yeah, sort of evolving.
See how good that's going right now.
Hey, it takes years. It takes years. No, I'm in that same, like, I've not been writing as much. I mean, you're probably in the same boat where it's like when you were working on other people's work, it's also hard to find the time to sit there.
Right.
Okay, I need to dedicate this to me and not some other entity or other project. And especially when you have kids and you have lives and whatnot, finding that time is not always easy. And over the winter break for me, that was my like, okay, I'm gonna sit down and work on stuff. And I finally saw like 3 different manuscripts, one of them dummied out,
Right.
you know, 2 of them with at least finished art of sort of like what I think it could look like.
Right.
When I just
Wow.
downloaded on my agent, and I'm sure like, oh God, there's a lot to go through here. But
Right.
it was that like I needed to get that stuff out because it's just been sitting on a shelf for so long.
Right.
And I imagine that's the same with sort of the painting side of things for you, of just like,
Yeah.
you need to.
Well, both. I would say both, the writing and the paint. Like I think I'm just having to, but I think for me also with the writing portion, aside from wanting to get that editorial feedback, I'm thinking of also doing more. So what's nice is that I don't know if you've noticed, but there's a lot of retreat type offerings out there.
Yep.
That I found, and I want to try doing writing versions of that, or at least taking a conference or something for dedicated to writing. So on top of which, I'm also trying to take a portion each day to read as well, like just because in order to write well, you got to read a lot. And so yeah, I almost feel like I'm, you know, sometimes I feel like I'm a student again. It's really bizarre, but yeah. I know. Although I have to say, you know, I really enjoyed, I mean, when I was, especially my last year, because it was all studio. I loved it because it was just all I did was paint. That's all I did. And I made my books, and you know, it was great because I just could focus and I didn't have to think about, you know, you know, you had your meal plan. So that's the only downside, is having to think about what to eat every day. But yeah, I mean, that was what's so amazing about that trip, that retreat with Helen Dardick. This is place in France called A Simple Life in Provence.
Okay.
And they provide all the meals, like they're these gourmet meals for every meal. Like every single meal is considered. So you don't even have to think about food. You just have to think about like enjoying the place, and then you just paint. And so it was great. Like that's ideal for me.
Yeah. There's so many of those out there now that I'm like, it's hard to pick, and they're almost all in like amazing locations. And like we did a trip over this last summer with students to Ireland, and that was amazing. And just like the getting out and
Oh yeah, that was I saw those photos. Are
yeah,
great.
it was beautiful. The location where we were got hit by winter storms recently that like took out power and like not just took out power, but like in that country that shut stuff down pretty hard. And
Oh
so,
wow.
uh, but like just going experiencing that stuff. I know that when I retire, that is going to be a goal is to go out and do those kind of things, like do more and more of those like retreats and whatnot. It's just
Oh
it's
sure, yeah. I mean that's great if you're like that's like such a nice little I love that like a lot of artists are seeing that as their you know other source of income because it's such a
yeah
nice perk.
yeah you can travel. I mean, I want to
Yeah.
go over to Ireland if it wasn't for the school. Like the cost and the challenge of like time. I mean, I
Yeah.
spent basically a month there, and like
Wow.
that's an expense. Uh, so
I
um,
see.
at some point, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go to Iceland. That's one of the goals to get out to Iceland at some point. No, I don't want to go to sunny places. I'm as a pale redheaded man. I
You're
would
glutton
like
for
to keep
punishment.
my skin cancer free.
Oh man. Well, Iceland. Well, I've been to Iceland because my sister-in-law used to live there. Um,
Ooh,
yeah, and so that was real treat. Like that was so lucky. Like, and so um, it's so beautiful there. It's such a beautiful place. I mean, you forget that it's so cold.
plus
It's so
plus you
beautiful.
get Bjork is like everywhere, just constant. Yeah. No, I to me it's like it looks like the moon.
It feels like the moon. Like it really, it does. It looks like it. And then that's what I realized. I'm like, you know, this place feels so otherworldly because you can see the far stretch of the other side of the land
Yeah.
because all the trees are either nil, there are none, or they're short. I'm forgetting what, there's a reason for that. And I
Just
can't remember what it was, but
wind blown or something like that they can't grow because of a
they can't grow. Right, something, and then also a lot of them also die from volcanic ash or lava. Like some of them are just victims of some of parts of the
yeah.
landscape from volcanoes erupting. But yeah, something about that too. The wind, yeah, part of their so yeah, their trees are very short, so you can kind of their landscape is really otherworldly. Really
So
beautiful.
yeah, I want to go. I just visually like one of the things I don't. Do you know who Mike Lowry is?
I know.
Uh,
Yeah, I want to say yes, but I need to kind of
yeah.
see something.
If you saw the work, it's very cartoony. Uh,
Uh-huh.
he did. I'm trying to think of like some of the books. We have a bunch of them around here. But he's someone who does a lot of those travel things, and one of the things he does in those travel ventures that surprises me and like caught me off guard was I always assumed when you did these travel things that you had to like I'm gonna go sit down and draw the landscape, and then all of a sudden you have to draw it realistically. And I'm like, oh no, you don't, because if you look at what he does like cartoony versions of where he goes. And I always had
Yeah.
like you had to make this like you had to become a different artist while you were there. But
Uh-huh.
you were,
Oh, yeah, that weird disconnect. That happens to me all the time. Like that's so hard. Yeah, I really admire artists who can take their voice and then apply it to whatever they do.
yeah. So like
That
I
amazes
tried
me.
to do that when we were in Ireland, and it was like it was hard because you just sort of fall prey to like, well, I need to really capture what's here.
Right, right.
But he's so good at that, and like going to Iceland is one of those ones where it's like it's such a different landscape that I would be afraid that I'd fall into this like, well, let me make it beautiful like a photograph,
Right,
or you
right.
know, let me get out these oil paints and like not that I oil paint, but I'd fall into like materials that are not natural to me.
Right.
Okay, so I'm gonna ask a question that I've asked other people, and in fact, it came up in class the other day, and I know you have an answer for this, and it's gonna be a challenging question.
Oh.
What are you horrible at when it comes to art?
God, that's so general. I feel like I'm horrible at lots of things. Um, when it comes to
Yeah,
art,
like
I mean, like
I'm
what to like what I draw, like the process or the drawing or the anything?
Could be anything, but I'm even thinking like I'm really bad at creating. I enjoy compositions, but I also all my compositions
I
the right.
see.
So it's
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
very hard, and I know that
Okay.
part of that is just a legibility for like pagination and whatnot.
Okay.
There's also like there's reasons why you might go the other direction, and so all my characters face to the right in almost every sketch. Yeah.
Well, so that's funny that's so funny.
So yeah, what are the traps that you fall into?
That's funny that you say that, because sometimes I tend to want to go right too, because even though this guy's left, but I just thought that moves the story forward kind of thing. But for me, I don't know. For what I think I find that I struggle with compositions. When I get a job, I usually, when I consider how much time I need for something, sometimes they would think, like a lot of clients will like want to give me more time on the back end for the finishes, but I'm like, no, I really need time to plan each page. Like I need that time. I feel more than doing a finish.
Yeah, you get sketch time versus the finished.
Yeah, because I think that when the sketch itself is resolved like perfectly, like, or at least like really well, then the painting will go well. If it's not, it's gonna go horribly wrong. You know, that's almost always is the case for me. If I'm not liking a composition, it's a mess. Like I can't move it forward. It takes much longer.
How do you do tons of thumbnails?
I do thumbnails, but I wouldn't like. I think what I tend to do, because a lot of the books I had done, you know what it is. When a lot of the books I was doing, like a couple years ago, I felt like I was compromising my schedule a lot. Like I had to compromise my time a lot. Like I had to figure out a way to like do a certain amount of work in a short period of time. So sometimes I would skip steps, like, and forget, oh yeah, I should do more thumbnails. I felt like I had to do, I would do thumbnails, yeah, but not little, like I realized I should be doing really tiny ones, like teeny tiny ones. Not like I would do like
full scale,
like this big.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say full scale. No, never full scale. Like I would say like that big. And then like really rough first, and then, but I realized that I think I might do better if I just literally just scribbled, like shape,
or
because I think in shapes. So, but anyway, I think I'm not that great at composing quickly, because also I like to skew angles, and I feel like I'm also designing, so I feel like that takes a lot of practice.
I've definitely fallen into the habit of, and I was so okay. I'll tell two stories here. Well, not necessarily stories, but tidbits. I have fallen prey to not doing thumbnails and going directly to sort of full scale sketches, primarily because I'm working digitally, and like I can take a thumbnail in, and then I'm doing detail anyways, and so it's a matter of like I like the idea of sort of or not that I necessarily like it, but I end up leaning more on sort of a larger scale sketch, and then just adjusting and duplicating at a large scale. But one of that surprises me, I was talking to students today, and we're doing logo sketches because they all have to do some sort of branding, and logos is obviously part of that. And I told them they needed to do 100 little sketches, and I'm talking like little thumbnail type sketches. And I said 100, and someone's like, "That's funny you said 100." And they're like, "You weren't serious about that, were you?" And I'm like, "Yeah." Like those sketches, thumbnails shouldn't take you crazy long time. Refined sketches should, but not thumbnails. And so like
Right.
it was funny to watch this reaction of like, you're asking for 100. I can't believe it. And obviously, like when I explained, like you don't have to be super thorough in this thing. It doesn't have to
Right.
be an amazing sketch, but yeah, 100. It's and then
Right.
then they finally got like, oh, okay, it's not that hard
Right.
to get through. But I'm someone who like, and I probably do need to do more sort of thumbnailing as well, or more and more sketches. But there's also like a process that I go through when I'm sketching out some. Like I just did a dummy book for a project, and unfortunately there was a mix-up in the contract where I didn't get the contract in time, and so by the time that I even wrote saying, hey, or they wrote me saying like, oh, when is this stuff coming in? And I'm like, oh, I haven't even signed the contract. Oh, we sent it out to you. Did you not get it yet? There was this like mix-up there, and when they said that, I was already like 2 weeks behind on thumbnails.
Oh,
yeah.
no.
And in reality, the contract didn't have thumbnails in it. But I did last night to them. But it took me maybe a total of like 2 days to get the whole thing mapped out for thumbnails. You know, like not the most. Now I'm saying 2 full days, not like an hour each day.
Right.
You know, it was a good amount of work, but it was.
Yeah, but that's like speedy.
Yeah.
In grand scheme of things.
But I'm also, and I had to write to them and saying, and I don't know if this is going to happen with you, like especially if you're traditional or jumping to more traditional materials. The process that I'm using now is different than the process I used last time with the book with them.
I see. Yeah.
I'm trying. I actually told them like, this is about the level I want to maintain the sketches at. Like, even though they're thumbnails, I don't want to get super detailed. You know, like when they write back saying like, here's what the refined sketches are. It's like, no, these are actually what I consider refined at this point. Even though they're thumbnails, because if I get too tight, it becomes a problem. And so there's lots of like, how can I make this quick and easy, knowing that there's going to have to be a lot of flexibility in the final production. Imagine the same thing would probably happen with you, where like your paint lines are going to be different than the way that you would digitally create edges and stuff.
Yeah, I don't like being married to what I put down. Yeah, that's always that could be a trap too.
And just like you know, you don't have the editing power with traditional like you did with digital. So there has to be some flexibility of like, you may not hit the exact color that you have in your color comp, and that's always sort of a challenge.
Right. That's a funny thing, because at one time I got like someone asked me to do for a cover if I could do like because I was semi new to doing covers, and they asked me to do a color sample. I never do that. I've never done that before. Like for me, I like to work out the color as I go. And so, you know, I was realizing, gosh, I don't like working like this, because I felt like it was so tight. Like over planning for me in the final process really kills it for me. Like I don't like to do that. Like, cause for me, a lot of what makes something really exciting is what I don't expect to put down when I'm actually doing it. So when they ask for a plan before I actually because for me the fun is in the color and the rendering and then the surprises, and when they ask me to plan it out, I'm like, oh God. And so it kills the energy for me of the piece in the end. Even as much as I try to keep it fresh, it's like I really try to keep it fresh, but like, you know, but I had to do it. I felt like, I guess because they needed it for the marketing people, or they needed it, I guess they needed to, because it's a cover, I guess it wasn't like, I've never been asked to do that for an interior, but
I
it was
the exact same experience, and I found out later. Was it an educational book?
No.
Okay, because someone told me at one point, I had the same like concern of like, they wrote me in, and this is for the book for the Little People Big Dream series, where it's all like the cover is the thing for that series. You know that series, right? The
I'm not. I have to see again.
It's always got
a
of the person, like a historical figure as a little on the cover.
Yes.
And they're all
yes,
different colored backgrounds. So like I got one of those, and then
Oh, cool.
Before I even started sketching,
Mm-hmm.
we need the cover. And of course, the reason why they need that is they go out and sell it as educational packages to schools.
I see.
And it was the first time I'm like, what do you mean you need the cover? I haven't even done any of the interior. And
Oh, yes.
someone pointed out to me it was because it's an educational book. That's why they asked for it so early, because of that marketing side. It's not just marketing to stores, but it's marketing to schools.
Schools.
That becomes part of the equation. And that one was challenging. If anybody's heard this before, bear with it. But that one was really challenging because it was basically saying, hey, set the style for this person that you have to draw for this entirety of the book. As a kid,
Yeah, that's a lot of pressure.
Adult, and it has to transition over time in the book. And so it's like, how the hell do I start this thing? And eventually I had to actually draw the old version of I had Charles Darwin. So I had to draw Charles Darwin as an old person and figure out, okay, let me work backwards to figure out the cover. And
oh, wow.
That wasn't just part of their normal process. And it was weird. Let's put it that way.
And did you find that, were you satisfied in the end with how it,
I think
how he came out?
It's a series that has a very distinct look to it. As a cover, would I wanted a different cover? Maybe, just because I'm the idea of like just a face on the cover is not always my go-to.
Right.
So I might have wanted a little bit more play in the mix, but it's fine because that's the series. You know, you meet the demand. But it was a good series. I mean, I like the book. And there's nothing wrong with the book. Let me put it that way.
Right.
And so it was just a weird process of like having to do the cover before I've done anything. Yeah. Or without any sketches.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. I think it does sound like I think I've done that before. I can't really recall which book it might be anymore, but because they all sort of blend.
But you did educational stuff, I'm sure there's got to be something that had that.
Yeah, but there was probably there was one maybe book that I had to do although a lot of the educational stuff that I did they take from the interior.
Oh, really?
So I often have to do that. So that's which is why I don't. But there was a trade book that I did. I feel like I remember that I had to do a sketch for the cover before the book, like before I did any sketches for the book. So that was weird. And I think it could have been their timing was just off.
It's a strange concept to me, especially just because like most of the time those covers are
depend on the interior.
Like you need to figure out what the vibe of the book is, and all of a sudden you got to do it before you even know what the hell you're doing is such a challenge.
Yeah.
But I mean that's just the reality of the situation.
Yeah. Exactly.
Are there books that or I've asked this in a different way. Let me ask it this way.
Okay.
Let me ask it the more traditional way. Are there authors and concepts of books and things that you want to tackle in the future? Like obviously writing your own is huge. But are there people that you're like, oh man, it'd be fun to work with this person or work on this stuff?
That's so funny that you asked that. So I've always wanted to do more collaborate. Actually, that's something I didn't mention, but I am collaborating with on a book that I've never done this before because it's not the usual route most people do, but because I'm collaborating with a published author, and I can't say any details about it at all. So for me, like wanting to collaborate more has always been something I've always wanted to do. You know, the way, you know, Lane Smith, John Cheska, that kind of thing. I've always wanted to do stuff like that. But because for me, I've worked better with other creative people around. I like bouncing ideas off of other people. I like, you know, I love the collaborative process.
So it would be someone famous then, huh?
What's that?
Someone famous?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't say famous, but she's, you know, well regarded. But, you know, I wouldn't, but no, I think I would say that she's still, I think it's more, I think the commonality of, we have several things in common. So I think I don't want to give too much away yet because
I don't do that. I'm joking just because you're like, it's hidden, it's secret.
Oh yeah.
Like,
just because it's so new right now in terms of like what we want to do, and we don't want to say what it is yet. So, but yeah, but I mean, my point being is just collaborating. And so I think that's also a really nice way, because I normally, when I'm illustrating someone else's book, I feel like this is going to be where she's a writer and I'm an illustrator. And, but what's nice about this process is that it's really going to be more
truly
organic. Yeah. Truly collaborative versus like, well, here's the manuscript. So yeah.
The manuscript I'm working from for the project right now that I just handed in those things, I wrote back and saying, like, is there any way to change the text on this on one little thing? Actually, not even one little thing, the title. Because, and I won't name the title of the book, but the way that it is written flows off the tongue differently for me with a certain like letter dropped out of it. And even the art director who's working on it sent me galleys for how things were laid out, and he put it without that letter, and the contract had it without that letter, and the editor wrote to me about it without that letter. And so like clearly something about that letter, it's like everybody wants to drop it out of the word, and I'm like, oh, it'd be so good if we could drop that out, because then it'll be easier. Like we all wouldn't struggle with the phrasing through the whole thing. And who knows, maybe they're willing to do that. So I wrote it just joking. There's no way that they'd be willing to drop this one letter, would they? I'll still work on it no matter what. But I know I'll struggle every time I read it. I'll say, like, have you ever had a book change title on you midway through?
I don't think so. No, I don't think so.
I have had that happen on 2 different books, where this manuscript that's sent to me changes title by the time that we get to the finished art. And so like I have files, like Google Drive files or whatever, that have the old title. So like there's a book I worked on called The Note Who Saved the Music. No. Uh-oh. That's bad. The Note. What is it? Hold on. I'm gonna go look. This is bad. I can't remember right now off the top of my head. Where do I even have this book? I have it somewhere in my pile here. The Note Who Saved the Music? Is that right, Lauren? Oh, yeah, The Note Who Faced the Music. There it is. The Note Who Faced the Music.
The Note Who Faced the Music.
Like, it was a simpler, like, it was just half note at the beginning. And so, like, I still call it half note half the time. I correct myself in the process, because it was just easier to say half note and be done. Okay, so I'm going to go back to a question. This is talking about the flaws, not necessarily flaws in what you do, but flaws in the system at large. What kind of mistakes have you made in your artwork over time? Like the equivalent of, I've said this on here multiple times, so people are probably bored of it, but I had a piece where in the Photoshop file, I was selecting out some background, like white from the illustration to get rid of, and I accidentally cropped out someone's ear and went to print. And so there's books out that have a character that's missing an ear. And the ears are sort of a big part of their design.
Oh.
And so I imagine there's something you got in your arsenal where you're like, oh, that was a mistake. Or that we missed this little spot or something.
No, everything I do is perfect.
I knew that was coming right after. Once you said, I was like, I know where this is going. Yeah, that you're better than me, and that you're.
No, there was one, and now I don't want people looking for it.
Yeah, we don't need another book.
No, it's not a book, but it's actually in in High Five magazine. I think it's a magazine, but it's like, one of my I love working for Highlights, High Five. It's been a while since I've gotten to work with them, but I remember and that's the other thing with digital work. I think it's just kind of dumb, but it's like I just had the background, like I think I had, like, in the background there was a truck, and then there was some kind of, like, I think there was there was a background piece that was supposed to be behind it, but it was in front of it. Something didn't make it make sense. If you were looking hard enough, you would catch it. It was just one of the, like, that's a really dumb one, but it's like, I just remember every time I see it, I'm like, oh, I want to, because it's I really like the piece too. It's like this really busy piece. So it's not like you can easily spot it, but because it's one of those, you have to look for things in that piece. You have to look for, like, the similarities or what's wrong. It's like, I think it was like one of those, what's wrong with this.
Yeah. Spot the differences, kind of.
Yeah, spot the difference, kind of thing. And so, and it was just the truck. No, I don't think it was what's wrong with it, because then it could have just, I could have just, like, shaken it off.
What's wrong with it? You did it wrong.
Nothing wrong with it.
Yeah.
No, it was more like the differences. And so, I think I just had, like, I don't know. I think there was just something in the wrong layer, and it just didn't make sense. And I don't even remember what that was, but that wasn't that interesting. But yeah, I have to think about that one, though. I'm trying to think. But I mean, for me, it's always like looking at my old work and just being like, ugh.
Yeah.
It's like everything's wrong with that one.
Okay, so this is a question I asked the students the other day, and I probably know the answer to this, but when you make a piece, do you immediately, like, think, it's not good, or do you like a piece when you're done with it? Is there some sort of, like, time frame in which a piece goes from being amazing to awful, or the other way around, from awful to all of a sudden, like, oh, I love this piece because it's so weird, or what have you?
Yeah, I think, well, if something is awful, or at least it's just not getting where I want it to go, sometimes I have to just keep pushing harder. I know I'm going to get to that place where it's going to be cool, or I'm going to have to, but it's funny because, like, I'll be happy with it in the moment, but then later on looking at it, I'm just like, oh, like, I just don't like it the same way. But certain, like, yeah. And in other books, like, I wish I had more time and I want it to be better. Like, I wish I had more time for some other books I've done. And a lot of that was an issue because, a lot of times the timing wasn't so great, but then I was also working full time at the same time. So I felt like I was squeezing in a lot out, like I was literally trying to squeeze out free time to do it. And not make it look like I was
not burning yourself out or something of the sort. Oh, did we lose audio? I'm watching to make sure that we get it back here. Hold on. Something happened to the audio.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I think it was a battery thing. So I had unplugged earlier when I went to show you my dog, and then I forgot to plug back in.
That'll do it every time. I've had that happen many a times on this show. I forget what we were just talking or what was being said, but
looking at your, like, if I like the work that I do when I'm,
I mean, do you find, like, I tend to make a piece, and for, like, maybe a day I'm like, yeah, I like it, and then after that I start spotting, well, I could have done better with this, or I start to even think, like, on the next piece I'm going to do this thing better this next time, and so, or I'm going to try this other, avenue, whatever it is, and that will make me happy. But this one is missing that moment or that thing that I thought was going to be so fun.
Yeah.
And
that's 100%. Okay. Like, I do that a lot. Okay. Yeah.
So I'm not in this by myself, adrift in the world of self-hate. No. Do you have imposter syndrome?
No. What? Oh, I mean, I feel like that's, like, my middle name. That's my middle initial. I get it.
I like that. my middle.
Well, okay. So for example, so that one time I got that email like in like I think it was 2021, 2020. I can't remember even when I did it, but when I got the Barack Obama book with golden books, and my agent was like, "Are you sitting down?" You know, at Mela at MB, she's like, "Are you sitting? You have to sit down for this."
Yeah.
And this is all my email, and then she's like, you interested in doing, you know, Barack Obama for golden books?" And I just start jumping up and down. And then I was just like, why? And then the second question was, why are they asking me to do it? It's like, I had no idea why. Like, I'd never really done, you know, biographies before. I never really, you know, it's not like likenesses. I mean, I did educational books, but I wouldn't say like likenesses was in my repertoire.
Okay.
Not that the golden books have to be like perfectly, you know, perfect, you know.
Obama is someone where you kind of have to get it.
Kind of have to, yeah.
I get
So, and then at the time, I was also playing around with style again, as I usually do, because I had been furloughed from my job during COVID, and then it came back on again. Like, but there was a period of time when I was just playing around with my work because I was kind of getting re-inspired, and I was trying some new techniques because I had time. You know, that's what happens when I have time. Like when I'm not going at like 250 miles an hour and working, and then I start to think about what I'm doing. And I was doing something totally different. I did this book called I Could Say No, or no, yeah, I Could Say No, and it was a social.
You had a moment. You had a moment
there.
where you started the name wrong, and
and yeah, it was like a social emotional book about boundaries, and I was able to, like, I convinced them that if to use the style because I was doing all these like pieces on Instagram that were like in tune with what was going on politically. So I was like playing around with that, and then when I got this Obama book, I'm like, well, can I do it in this style? They're like, no, they want it in this style, like your usual. I'm like, oh, okay. So that's why I feel like I always have this weird duality. Like people still ask for this other style that I've been doing, and so even though I tried to kind of evolve out of that often, and so then I always had this constant, because I feel like I'm always changing things up a bit. I always feel like I have imposter syndrome. Like I'm like, is this good enough? Is it? And you know, and when I got Obama, I was just totally stressing when I was doing the book because I was so I kept going to that place where like, oh my gosh, this is forever. It's gotta be good. Like I was like in this weird.
It's got like double pressure on that one because it is a golden book,
Yeah.
Obama book. Like,
Yeah.
golden books are like a icon
Right.
within the industry.
So many
just like you grew up with some golden book at some point, or has, you know, whether it be Scrawny Tawny Lion or what have you.
Right.
And so like all
Pokey Little Puppy.
Yeah, Pokey Little Puppy.
Right.
What are the other? There's like a bunch of them that are like classics,
right?
And so that idea of like all of a sudden having to fit in that, I'm sure like there is a challenge of like living up to stuff, and obviously like it got produced and whatnot, but was it when you got that, or when that initial offer came in, and your agent at MB offered that, when the wording like sit down, were you obviously there's
was I sitting down?
Yeah, was there there's shock, obviously, I assume, in a situation like that, but was there like a delay and like sort of realizing like, oh man, this is a book, this is a thing that I gotta really like work on, or was it sort of like, this is amazing, I can't wait to do it, and the pressure didn't happen until you started to make?
Yeah, that's usually, it's very delayed. Like I think the excitement went on for a while until I actually sat down with it. So, and then I questioned everything I did, like everything. So, because then it's a matter of, then it turns it but I was trying to separate myself from it. So it was like, there was a lot of, because it kind of was set up like when they give it to you, it's kind of like an educational book where they have guidance and, you know, what scenes they want to show and locations. And then, and, you know, some are more specific than others. And so,
not that
so
a
yeah.
rigidity to it, but there is a structure that needs to be hit because of it.
Right. And there, and in that sense, like with that book, I feel like compositionally, I would like to do things a bit different for some of them, but ultimately, yeah, I think I remember just feeling a lot of stress and anxiety with this idea that, oh gosh, like usually just the end result and what that's going to be like. I just put a lot of pressure, like in my head that didn't need to be there.
Do you know if he actually saw it?
I don't know. I have no idea. He never really said anything when it came out, and so yeah, I have no idea.
He didn't send you a personal email that said, "Hey, I love this. Contact me here."
No, he said, yeah, no.
Yeah. That would be the coolest part if a book led to that. Like all those people are like, oh,
no. I think there was that hope. Yeah. A lot of my friends were thinking that it's like, oh, he might, you know, because he's gonna see it. Yeah. He's gonna see it. Yeah, at the very least, he's probably gonna see it.
You know that I've seen people who have ones where it's like, oh, here's a picture of like Michelle Obama holding my book, and like that's pretty rad to
that'd be pretty thrilling. Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't have to be just the Obamas; it can be someone else. But
yeah,
I remember that was the instance. There was someone like that.
Yeah.
I don't have any pictures of famous people holding my books, but someday I'm gonna have Vin Diesel holding my book. That's Fast and Furious. Play. Don't laugh about it.
That was so random.
No, I was thinking like, who's someone that would be amazing to have holding a book? Not because like they're an icon of like history, but an icon like they're just so like we love the
different. It's like not a departure.
Yes,
from...
we love the Fast and the Furious movies in this household because they're so over the top. Like having someone like Vin Diesel in a book holding my book would be pretty hilarious.
That would be
the equivalent
awesome.
of. I've done these Gabbin Doodles for some years, and I got not sponsored. I got a cool swag bag from a company for doing these.
Oh, cool!
It sounds cool. You're like, oh, cool. I got like a company that was like, hey, this is neat. The company that I got Preparation H.
Wait, what?
Yeah, hold on.
What's the relation there?
So in October, you know how there's Inktober?
Yeah.
I have done a thing that I called Stinktober, and it was all hot humor for the month. And
that's funny.
The first year was all monsters, like classic Universal monsters, doing things like the mummy was, wiping his butt in in a stall, and the vampire was airing out his coffin and whatnot. And then I got, let me see, I think I have it sitting in my studio here. And to me, like, this is so much funnier that I got a swag bag for this than like, Liquitex sent me some sample material. So here, let me see if I can go find this. It's sitting over here.
That's thrilling. Yeah, I gotta see.
The contents in it. I got a fanny pack covered with fannies. I don't know if you see this, but it's in the colors, and it's got little butts all over it. And then inside,
my God, that's hysterical. Wait, I gotta put my glasses on because it's so tiny.
It came with Preparation H and Preparation H Soothing Relief.
Color coordinated.
And so I think there was something else in here that may have been silly, but like the fact that I got this.
That's
like,
awesome.
That's the kind of like collaboration I'd want to do. So if someone said like, who would you like to collaborate with? It's not going to be like the esteemed poet laureate. It'll be someone like Vin Diesel or someone who's a stretch as to why you should be like, why people would care about them in a kidlit world. Yeah.
That's fantastic.
So I know you're jealous.
very jealous. I
Someday.
need to do one of these so I can have my own preparation.
Yeah, you'll get some.
I need to get some hemorrhoidal creams.
I mean, we're at the age.
Well, my husband is he's a gastroenterologist, so it's applicable here.
Oh man,
And
it must be.
There's a lot of talk of.
Tell him I got preparation H on my side. They like my work now. Follow me. So I don't know if they follow him, but they follow me.
No, that says a lot.
Your husband's a gastroenterologist. He doesn't do the surgery stuff, does he?
He does the colonoscopies. It's not surgery
per
se, but
man, okay. Yeah. Is he in the background there by any chance?
Yeah, he is actually. He's in the kitchen.
Can you ask him for me? Because I asked this to my doctor when I had to go do that. What makes you decide to be in a job where you have to poke and prod in someone's butt?
Dan, did you hear that? What? He's asking a question about your job. Because he had the sponsor that gave him preparation H because they were doing like this. But yeah. He went, okay, come over here. He's got a question.
Because I'm guessing he doesn't have one of these.
Take a look up here. See?
This is my fanny pack, my fanny pack that I got sent by Preparation H for doing artwork. Preparation H inside of it. I do some butts.
Very nice.
But my question to you, and I asked this to and feel free to just say, I'm not answering this and walk away. But I asked this to my gastroenterologist as well, of like, you go to medical school, what makes you go, I want to be a doctor that deals with butts?
Well, I didn't think of it as that because it's much more than that. That's just part of it. Someone's got to do that dirty work too. So
this is the 4-year-old in me that's coming out saying, body, butts.
4-year-old.
That's okay. I get that question from everyone. It's a dirty job, but somebody's got to do it.
that is the perfect answer to that. It's
all right.
I mean, yeah, someone's got to do it. And then, I have a question for you because we had this argument with someone. You'll know this. Propofol, right?
Propofol.
Yeah, propofol.
Yeah.
They put people under with that, but is someone actually under?
Yeah. You're completely asleep.
I heard that it was that like they'd still say like, hey, we need you to move, and you'd still move.
No, not really.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, it's moderate sedation, so you're not conscious. Things like fentanyl and Versed, those are narcotics, and benzodiazepines, those will make you kind of drunk, and you're conscious, but you're not going to have much memory of anything. But with propofol, you fall asleep, but it has to be given repeatedly because it eventually wears off, and you can wake up and then be responsive. Yeah. But yeah, once you get the initial dose, you're not conscious.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. You settled an argument that I had about a week ago, and I lost.
Okay. Wait, there's this joke that I think he was waiting forever to answer. Like when his dad called, right, and he asked you, how are all your patients?
Oh, I said a bunch of assholes.
I truly am a little kid at heart, so that's like right up my.
We have these dirty jokes like that. When I'm examining a patient, I said, well, we're gonna get to the bottom of it.
Oh no! Oh no!
I'm gonna go. I gotta get ready.
Okay.
Thank you.
Patty.
I'm sure that was an unknown that he was gonna suddenly be on here.
Right.
But it's the Stinktober thing I did for a couple of years. And then I've had this dream, and my wife says I shouldn't do it, but I do a gallery show in the area. There's a little gallery called Nakata that's up in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and I always make little different themes for it every year. Of like this year, I made not every year, but every show, And this year I made these little like robot guys out of wood, but I really want to carve like whittle butts and then just have butts as the like, so you can go in and buy a butt and they'd have underwear on them. But
Oh,
yeah, so it's not just butts.
they painted?
Yeah, they'd be
Or they...
yeah, they'd be painted and like one would have like Superman underwear, like underoos, and one would be long and stuff. And my wife said something about like, I don't remember why she said no. To me, I think it'd be really funny to put that in, just because of like someone could buy a butt.
Butt.
Yeah.
You can't go wrong with butts. You really can't.
Yeah, it's. I'm not saying I am high class of it, or I'm high ass. Okay. Yep, that's the butt talk portion of the evening. I bet you more than usual this podcast devolves into people talking about
Into butts and...
Wait, what was that? What was that? Were you trying to do a pun there?
What? You're supposed to say chicken butt.
You
know that one?
I do know that one. That's a classic. That's a no. I've never had a chance to talk to someone that's a gastroenterologist like that. That's fun, and I'm glad.
Oh yeah, a lot of people like to like. Yeah, it's funny because you should try like sitting at a table when you're eating with a.
And they're going off.
So embarrassing. Yeah, talking about diarrhea and it's most disgusting stuff at a dinner table. I was like, no.
How many polyps can you hear about in your life?
Oh God.
I like the fact that like I can say that and you like immediately know. Well, especially at our age,
Right,
our
exactly.
advanced age. These are the things that we deal with. When I tell, not that I tell students about this kind of stuff, but I can't talk to students about like, oh, do you know what it's like to have a colonoscopy? they don't have a clue. Or an endoscopy. My wife had one of those.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
That one sounds awful, like going down your throat.
I've had one of those. Yeah. When, like in my 30s.
Wait, was it your husband that did it?
Oh no.
Oh.
He wouldn't do it anyway. Like even like I usually like I had to have a colonoscopy, but like his colleague did, because you don't want to be doing your family member.
Interesting.
I think
Okay.
there's yeah.
You didn't know you were going to be talking about this tonight.
Nope.
Admitting.
That's okay.
Admitting what through in life.
Well, the funniest thing was like the fact that he actually, when he got his, it was with his colleague did it, and that to me is really wild. That's really
That's when
wild
they start
to
playing pranks on each other.
me.
You won't believe what I found up there. Just leaving notes inside. Whatever it may be. Just signing the inside. You didn't know, but I put a tattoo while I was in there.
Oh man, what time is it?
It is 10:52. Yeah, this is where you start to go. Okay, remember how
Oh my God.
all of a sudden I have to leave. When the conversation shifts to colonoscopy talk. For any
It's going way forward.
for any young fans out there watching, good luck. It's, at least probably when you did that kind of stuff, like he could talk you through the prep and be like,
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely
some bonuses to having
yeah.
someone of that expertise in your house.
That's right.
Well, that really went awry.
That's okay.
But also thoroughly enjoyable for someone who loves.
Well, I'm learning that I definitely don't want a gesso. Like the large.
This late again.
Well, so it's funny because I worked on this other piece, and I was liking, I think it's because I'm working too wet. So, this other piece I did it was like nice and it was smaller. So I think it's because I'm trying to just cover it right now. Like usually when I start painting, I block everything.
Yeah.
I like to block. And so because this is a larger, more, complex piece, I feel like I'm still blocking and I'm talking. So I don't tend to get much.
That's where you get out your colored pencils and you start like
right.
refining after
Yeah.
the fact. One of the things I see that you're doing that I absolutely love, that I've become appreciative of, and I had who was it that was talking to me about this? Oh, Katie Tanis. We were talking about this. I don't know if you know Katie Tanis's work, children's book illustrator, but we were talking about how when you're working with traditional media, the idea of like, you can either mix a big batch of color and go perfectly flat with all the stuff.
Yeah.
Or you can try to mix as you go and maintain an edge, but with the reality that you're going to have these little subtle variations in color throughout the piece.
Right.
And so like I look at this and I look at like the green on the wall in the background, the stuff where it's got like some textural stuff. And it's, to me, those are like the beautiful moments where it's not perfect.
Right.
And I don't mean not perfect like
no,
man, that's
no, I know what you mean.
But,
I know what you mean.
Yeah. Just that idea of like celebrating the variety of color and texture that shows up just because of the process itself.
Right.
And I referenced to a student the other day about the same thing about like, you must know Rebecca Green's work. Yeah.
Yeah.
She does that same thing where it's like, you can see the mixing happening on the surface and not on a palette. And that's, to me, those are really lovely moments. Get in.
Right. And then the trick is knowing when to stop, right? And that when
not to overwork it and all of a sudden try to blend everything so it's perfect.
Right.
And that's always a challenge. I mean, that's a challenge of just technical know-how on a lot of things in general.
Right.
Like you're doing traditional or digital. We have when you're working digitally, how much are you actually like correcting and changing on the fly? Like, are you doing lots of undo, or are you someone who sort of like, what are the rules of engagement with digital for you?
I don't know. I mean, I think I do a lot of undoing because I've actually done. Have you ever like exported the video of your drawing? Yes. Like, I'll watch how many times my daughter showed me how to do that. I thought that was fascinating. And I was like, it was really cool to see it and see how much I was editing myself. But I feel like I do a lot of undoing, but what's nice about working, I feel like when I work digitally, it's like my head is already in the finished piece versus in this case, I feel like it's so much slower, but and so the decisions I make is so different from if I was going to do it digitally. So like I'll put something down like very quickly, knowing I can scale it and do weird things with it. And but here I'm more mindful about when I'm going to put something down. You have to give the forethought or like. Yeah, but weirdly, like sometimes I feel like I commit faster when I'm doing digital, which I feel like I want to be able to do that in my painted work, maybe because I feel this more confident with the digital stuff. But I won't necessarily edit it that much sometimes. It depends. But if I'm just tooling around, obviously I'm going to be doing a lot of undoing. If I'm just playing around, or if I do something that's stream of consciousness, then I'll like, so like stuff I do, like a lot of stuff I was doing was like the later stuff was a lot of stream of consciousness stuff and just like drawing as I was going and like really focusing on color and shapes, and texture. But I don't know. I don't know where I'm going with that. But I mean, I don't know. I feel like I'm more decisive when I'm doing it digitally sometimes. But what I've noticed is that what I don't like is it can be tedious because of the just creating the shapes digitally and then coloring it in. Whereas it's so much more satisfying to me to fill in paint, like just paint. So much more satisfying than to render digitally. It's just because I'm just trying digitally. I'm just trying to recreate what I do if it was like painted.
Yeah, I mean, I have the challenge of when I sketch, like the dummy book I sent off. Some student asked me today about this, about that idea of like, well, if you do traditional, do you do traditional sketches? And isn't there a conflict of going from digital to traditional? Or, you know, and same thing could be said the other way. If you do traditional sketches and you go to digital, and I don't think it's really a challenge for me because my sketches are not meant to be locked in 100%. Or there has to be that ebb and flow, that play. Like you mentioned, the idea of like, you know, that stuff becomes monotonous at a certain point. And so there's rules that I play by, or I try to set up and manage that as much as I can as I go along, so I'm not having to have those fights later down the line. One of the ways that I've sort of summarized and on here a few times, but for those that haven't heard this before, when I've set the rule for myself that anytime I do digital going forward, I am only allowing one layer total, and it's because it's more like working with
Paint.
you have to respond. You can't.
I do. That's the thing. It's funny that you said that because that I do recall, like when I work digitally, I kind of try to work mimicking how I would paint something.
Yeah.
Which is probably why I'm putting down something like I'll do something a little faster, because I was also used to doing that on the job when I had a job, and so when we had to do an illustration quickly and I had to, you know, make a design very fast, I had to commit really quick. I literally would just go on screen and not even do sketches. I would just do it. Do it. Yeah. And then over the years, like working digitally, I also to kind of keep it fresh, to make it look or feel like more spontaneous, or because it's so easy to get overworked in digital mode, that, you know, I try to approach it as if it was a painting, even doing washes first, like putting a layer of color wash, not using the fill tool, but using a brush.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like literally letting the texture stay in there.
Right.
And I mean,
so that those happy accidents can happen digitally.
You can see that even in the Mommy King. There's like a roof that I noticed, very flat, and it's not a big swatch of color, but it has a little hint of texture, a little bit of layering in there.
Okay, cool.
Push that idea of like, it's not meant to be a vector image. It's to be something else. And like those are those moments that I really sort of cherish, in where people understand that like you can I don't, again, I want to be careful that people don't think I'm like anti-digital, because I am not anti-digital of any sort, but that the method in which you are making is apparent. Not that the material is, but the method in which you're making is apparent. And so that that layering and stacking becomes really, really lovely in a piece like that. And that can be done traditionally or digitally or what have you as you go along. Do you have artists that you're looking at right now that you're like, this is the superstar, everybody should know this person?
Oh, so when my husband and I took a trip to Montreal, I went there for the first time ever, last September or something like that. And I went to I feel like places outside of the US have books that they wouldn't necessarily carry here. Yep. And I found this person, and she actually, I think she won an award in Bologna or somewhere, I don't know. But I found this book by Katerina Voronina.
It's going to be a second before it shows up on my feed. So,
okay. I'll just hold it there for a bit.
Okay. Yes. Yeah.
Do you know this work?
The name and the work looks familiar. I don't know this book offhand.
So yeah, I just
French. I don't read French.
Yeah, no, I know. I used Google Translate to read it. You know, when you can hold the camera and it'll translate the words instantly.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
It's really wild, yeah. But I mean, it blows my mind just how she plays with shape, and then the colors are really limited but really dynamic. I mean, you see these cool shapes. It's just so fun to me. And I think for me, and one of my biggest heroes in school was oh, sorry, am I pulling that away too quickly because you said that?
No, it's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, it's fine.
Was Lane Smith, because when he did Stinky Cheese Man. And then those crazy shapes he did. And I don't know what it was. I think because I was still in learning mode, and I feel like as a kid, I didn't really have art classes until I went to high school. My parents were immigrants, and you know, they kind of stuck within the family dynamic. We never went to camp. You know, I didn't take outside classes anywhere until I went to high school. Well, high school offered art classes, but like it wasn't until I had to apply for college when I actually took an outside art class, because my teacher said you need to have figure drawing in your portfolio. And I was like literally my senior year. I'm like, okay. So thanks for telling me. And so I don't know why we didn't do it in class, because I went to a private all-girls school and they didn't have nude models, I guess, in art class. I don't know why, but we didn't have. I mean, I don't know why we didn't really do. It was a really great art program, but we didn't do a lot of life drawing, I guess. Anyway, we did a lot of copying to learn. So anyway, where was I going with this? I totally lost my train of thought.
We were talking about butts. Try to slide that in there. Oh, that's there. Sorry.
That's okay. Oh, right. So I feel like, you know, I wasn't in that mode to like really, like I knew that I wanted to play with shape, and I did. I had, like, I remember I was doing these series of characters. I wrote this other children's story. It was a really bad story, but regardless, I had all these characters, and I was having fun painting them in acrylic, whatever, and I don't know, they were cute. They were cute characters. I really liked them, but I remember I got a compliment from one of the people that worked in the department. He was like, "Oh, is that your piece?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Were you really going for that like wonky style? It's really cool. I really like it." And I'm like, "Wonky?" I was like, "What do you mean?"
Were you going with that naive, chaotic look? It's really
I have no idea. Like, it was just this really, I guess because her body language was like really stiff and weird. And she was just walking down the street, and I interpret that as like, just, I feel like I was still in that learning phase, because I was really, when I switched majors, when I switched from fashion to illustration, it was the first time I really got to play. Like, really, I mean, in my art mode in high school, I was really just doing some classical stuff here and there. Like, we learned about impressionists. You don't really learn much about, like, it was a lot of the classical stuff, and then like drawing the figure, but based on, you know, the books, the anatomy books, and it's just very. And then by senior year, we were doing more abstract stuff, and but for the most part, I didn't really think about like style or anything like that. I was just like, I just remember like absorbing a lot of information, and then having a hand at drawing. And then when I kind of would pick up stuff instinctively. Like, I would paint, I really liked pen and ink. That's one of the media I still really love. I really liked Inktober when I was doing it, because I loved working with ink, and I forgot how much I loved it. But for me, I think just doing those really crazy fun shapes like Lane Smith did in Stinky Cheese Man, I thought that was like brave. Like, I don't know. I feel like I didn't know how to do that yet, you know, really well. that, so it was convincing. And so when I see people do that really successfully, you know, I'm always in awe, like more so than like someone who does something really, really well rendered, like a photograph, you know, like people who do.
Someone who knows how to stop is like such a skill that not everybody understands or uses on a regular basis. Like knowing when to say, like, that is perfect amount, I don't need to go any further, and I've solved the equation. So many of us want to keep going and be like, well, it's not perfect, let me keep adding, and eventually it becomes a mess. I have had that issue of, and I've tried to do it on here where like I try to do relatively simple some night, and then it just turns into like, ooh, I'm going to add this and I'm going to add that and I'm going to add this, and eventually it becomes a like truly a menagerie of things that just don't need to be there for the piece. I am getting there with this guy. It's taking a while, but I'm getting there. I need this guy to have little chin hairs. There we go. This is taking so much longer every time I do these. And how fast are you? Let me ask that.
Oh, well, it depends. Like, well, so this piece obviously not so fast. I can do. I mean, it depends on how complex the piece is. Like, I posted that piece yesterday. It wasn't like perfectly done yet. And I did that. I don't know how long did that take me to do. I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 hours.
Okay.
But you know, it's not completely. I mean, I think there's still some touching up to do, but and that one I did not gesso, so I wonder if that has something to do with it.
So that a new addition.
What's that?
The gesso thing is something that you tried just tonight?
No,
okay.
No. I kept kind of waffling between, because I did gesso a couple other things and I liked it. I liked what I was doing in it, but I think it was working because it was a much smaller piece and I was able to get to that place faster. Where right now, this is like, I'm still working on that. Like, but I think with not gessoing, so like when I did this one, I don't have to do that. It kind of just, it does this. I didn't have to, it really settles in there faster.
Yeah.
Whereas here it's just sitting on top of it, which was, you know, what was expected. But and also because I really could be, instead of the way I'm putting the paint down, I think because I'm putting it down with so too wet, if I did it with more pigment and thicker, I think I can get there faster. So I think it was just a matter, it was just it's
even tonight with what you're doing, I mean, there's nothing that there's inherently bad with what you're doing. It's just, I would even venture to say you're also looking at more detail than what you're doing. Like lots of smaller items.
Right.
So like it's I've had this problem, and one of the things that I did in this next book that hopefully works out in my favor, I set up a system where, like, normally I would do lots of colors for characters, like they would have all sorts of odds and ends on them. I decided I am going to color code the characters so they're like one flat color. And the reason being is I'm cutting paper, and when I paper, there's a limit to how much detail I can put in when it comes to scale. So like big I can do, but once I start getting smaller and smaller, it starts to become a problem of getting the detail in that I want. But if I color code the character and say, this character is just always going to be green, anytime you see green on a page for that color, know it's that character. And so it could just be a little blob of color in the background, and automatically you know, oh, that's, you know, so-and-so, or that's the dog, or whatever it may be, just because of that color cue. And so I'm trying to solve that, but at the same time, I've had this big problem with scale, just because I physically can't cut things that much smaller in the process.
Oh, I see.
And so, you know, scale is and detail level, like almost saying, okay, there's only so many little things I can put in before it becomes a challenge. And learning that is very, very hard.
Oh, so does that make it complicated when you're doing, let's say, more complex? So when you're doing more complex compositions, in general?
Yeah. So like right now, most of the things I do end up being relatively in the same scale range. Like
Oh, I see.
figures on the page, etc. Because if I go too much smaller, it gets really hard to put those details in.
Right.
I can go big, but there's a limit for scale down. And so just because of the cutting, like literally, I'm not good with an X-Acto blade and odds and ends. And so having the ability to find some manipulative way or some way to sort of create a system that works for me has been a challenge, but I think I'm starting to get to a point where I kind of understand what I have to do in order for that layers in Photoshop. You know, I can only do so many layers before it starts to look like something else.
I see.
What were you going to say? I'm sorry, I cut you off.
Oh, no, I think what happened was you cut out there for a second, so I wasn't sure if I missed something.
No, what I said was really important. It was probably the pull quote of the night. It was about butts. I'm very excited. This, you know, you don't even understand. Like, I'm very excited that we had a gastroenterologist on, and
Oh, glad.
like, you're cool and all, but your husband? Oh man. No, the reason being,
You could check that zero.
is can you tell him I'm a fan?
Okay, I will.
The reason I say that is like in the last couple
Oh, you're breaking up again. Why is that?
data. It's my phone. The Wi-Fi was having a problem. Is that
okay.
Is that better? Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. There's some, for some reason I'm on LTE now, but that'll work. It's an internet issue in our house that is causing a problem. What I was going to say is the last couple sessions we've had people on that were talking about dating, like trying to find a partner online and how challenging that is. And I never expected the conversation to go that way. At the beginning of the night, just like tonight, I had no clue that we were going to have the hero of all heroes show up in the background.
Oh my God, that's exciting. Yeah. Well, I guess I kind of feel honored by way of
By proxy.
by proxy. Exactly.
No, it's dumb. I'm sorry. I made it literally is just like potty humor left and right in my brain. My son, it's become a problem where my son will be in like conversations with his grandparents and he'll pull some potty humor joke and look at me like, did you see that, what I did? And I have to like, I laugh, but at the same time I also have to be like, no, that's not okay.
It becomes like this competition. Is that what you mean? Like
Yes, I have to say that's not polite to say in front of your grandparents, but at the same time, I'm like, that was a really good one. I appreciate that you made that noise in the background. Okay, I'm going to ask you to do something that's probably rare in something that you do. I want you to brag about yourself for a second.
Oh no, I can't do that.
This is called the most challenging part of the night. I want you to tell me something that you think you really excel at in illustration. Like, what is the thing that you like? And I ask this not because to like put you on the spot in that manner, but I think it's something that artists tend to be challenged by. They don't know how to like take a compliment or all sorts of things, and I want people to sort of say like, I'm really good at this thing, and like, screw you, I'm better at it than you are, kind of situation.
Oh, you really did put me on the spot.
Yeah.
I no. Let me think. I have to think about that one. I feel like because I feel like I've been all over the place, so I'm trying to think of what is it that for me that stands out that
What's the
I think I don't know. I guess maybe it is that maybe it is. I mean, for for me, I do look up to people who have been so successful at branding. But for me, I've always prided myself in, like, I thought I was really good at, like, being able to, I don't want to say mimic, but being able to problem solve with different media and styles. Because, like, the way I see it is, you know, for a lot of my career, I had to work full time and illustrate books. And so I like to come up with solutions that allowed me to hit a deadline, but still, you know, manage to turn out a book that was, you know, that would still, you know, make the library guild or something, you know? And so, yeah, so if it was like, and I try, and I like being able to play like that. But the other thing is now sticking to it. That's the other.
Yeah.
That's more the challenge. But yeah, I always, you know, and then like hitting those deadlines and being able to produce something really cool in a short period of time. That might have looked like it took much longer to do. So, I always saw illustration as like problem solving in a way. With all the varied types of jobs I got, like, here you have to do an angel in a classic style. You have 2 hours to do it, and it's got to look like those, like, I don't know, like those classical Baroque, you know, pieces that, you know, and then it has to satisfy the CEO of the company, because they don't want these like dumb looking angels. So, like, I don't know. So then I had to whip that up, you know, within a day. So, like, that kind of thing, I think I'm good at doing. Like, someone throws at me a problem, I like to problem solve it.
Yeah.
So
that's a skill that definitely comes from like art school, but also is not a skill that everybody sort of held on to in a way. I pride myself on that same sort of, like, give me a challenge and I will meet it without question. And it may not be the most perfect thing in the world, but I'm not hesitant on trying something artistically. And I see this, and this is going to sound like I'm griping, and I am a little bit about certain folks, but like, even in the education world that I'm in, there are certain folks that are unwilling to talk about art that's outside of their production. So, like, as an illustrator, I'm willing to talk about like painters' work and sculptures' work and sculptors' work.
Yeah.
And whatnot. And then there's people who go like, well, I don't understand illustration, so I don't want to talk about it. And it's like,
oh, right.
You can talk about this stuff. Like, you have an expertise that is helpful for students or whoever. That, like, tell it. Tell us what's good that they do. And
it all applies. Yeah, it's the process. It's all similar. It's just a different route.
The idea of bragging is I know it is very hard, but I do think it's important for folks to understand that you can celebrate what you do. That's spectacular.
Yeah. I appreciate the sentiment.
Yeah. I would even one of the things that I was going to say that I sort of appreciate about your work in general is the versatility that's there, and the ability to sort of, like, I've seen a bunch of different books from you over the years, and I know that there is like a thread that runs between all of it that says, like, this is Kristin's work, this is you know, your aesthetic and things of the sort. But I also know that looking at that work, there is also a there is it's similar to what you're saying, like adaptation. You're able to project and make the work suitable for said project. So looking at something like, you know, the two books I have on hand here, the Groundhog book and the Mommy King thing, they're two different aesthetics. They're like one's more cartoony and one's more realistic and whatnot. They have to be that for that project. If you do the Groundhog style in the Mommy King one, totally, like, it would feel wrong.
Right.
I mean, maybe that's the way to go. Maybe you got to do something that's
right. So that's the other thing is like, well, can it feel wrong? You know,
No.
like, can I break out of that box? Can I dare to do that? You know, and I think that's where that's where I question my own choices. So, and yeah, no, but at the same time, yes, this particular story, yeah, it should be grounded. What does that mean, that they should have chosen another artist? And that's where the, you know, so you think about, I start running my mind through that. And well, do I want to be doing this instead, or do I, you know, so it's hard to, you know, people always say, well, especially people who are still coming, who are new to the business, they'll start asking, well, should I have a style? But you know, but at the same time, I was told that versatility is good, and what do I do? And you know, and I'm like, you know, I'm still trying to figure that one out.
The argument made with students, because we just had a thing where they had to write about style, and
Yeah,
I keep trying to say the word voice instead, because
voice is a better word. Yeah, I agree.
Voice encompasses more than just the superficial
Right.
sort of
application.
Yeah, and one of the things that I said to students the other day that has been sort of my mainstay of the description is your work needs to be consistent, but that does not mean that it needs to be consistent aesthetically. It needs to be consistent in how you approach the work. And for some people, that consistency is the style that they work in. The, like, you know, the superficial, the what I've been saying, the skim coat, the thing that sits right. Some people it's the process that they go through, or some people it's the ideas that are the star of their work. And so I think that is probably a better marker for it, is just it needs to show an approach needs to be consistent. And that's a different argument than saying that it all has to look the same. Solve it. And if you can make it look like that, the approach is similar, people should be able to read between the lines and go, oh, if I give a project that has this, you know, this variable or this challenge, then I know they're going to come at it with a really interesting approach. And that may be what you actually look for in the end. And so, like, I look at it, and I don't know if you have the same thing, but like looking at something I did tonight, I'm like, oh, I chose to do mouths differently on these characters. I've never done it that way, and they look a little strange. But in the long run, it's the reason why I chose these mouths is because it makes these troll-like characters look more gruff and more like Neanderthals. And that's
I gotta look. I'm gonna stop.
What?
Oh, yeah. I love it. I haven't. I'm looking up to, because I have to look up high.
I just went blurry here. I'll zoom in so you can.
Oh, I like the
little faces.
That's great.
Like those lips are everything for me right now on these. And like that's the whole point.
And you said you've never done those kinds of lips before.
No, but I like them.
Yeah, I like them.
And so
it fits with the butt.
Yeah. Oh, I should have drawn a butt. I should have drawn a butt. There's still time. I do have to draw a horse going across here, or starting to come across, and so maybe I'll draw a horse butt in the process. A little hint. Are there things when you're working that are like your not necessarily the aesthetic choice that you make, but are there rules that you sort of live by when making? Like one of the things that I've gravitated towards, I just want my work to be fun, and I don't mean fun for the audience. If that happens, great, but more so fun for me. And that is like if I don't do that, I'm not doing a good job with the artwork. And so I'm wondering, do you have things like that, like a phrase or a some sort of like tenet you try?
I think for me, it has to have some edge to it. I think that's a word that always was like something that kind of grounds it. But like if something starts to feel, what's the word? Like if a piece, and not that I wouldn't say like every piece is gonna reach that, but if a piece starts to feel conventional, that's a good word, at least in my eye, like, if you know what I mean, then that's when I start to bristle. and I have to, then I know I have to add something to that, which would kind of ground it and make it kind of edgier. Like, some, I have to add, like, sometimes I forget to add certain elements that I realize, oh wait, I want to put, you know, I don't know, like line over this solid shape or something like that. Or, and then I, sometimes if I'm just not feeling inspired, I tend, my piece will start to move in that kind of conventional direction. And then I'll like, wait a minute, let me just push that shape a bit. I want to like skew that angle a little bit more. And so it's, for me, it is like at an edge, it could be, and when I say edge, meaning like edgier, so it's kind of, it's less conventional, but at the same time has more like these really cool like shapes and corners and just, yeah, I it's hard to explain, but
When you say,
so I think for me,
can that be more than just literally the, like,
it could be color,
yeah,
I guess.
okay.
It could be color
That's
choice.
like, how do you define the range or the things that can be changed to be edgier? And so, yeah, like color choice or those kinds of things push a piece into a different range than what is
Right.
expected, or
Right. And a lot of times for me, it's in the shape and the composition. A lot. This is where this goes back to what I was saying about how I have to struggle a bit when it comes to composing pieces and making it, the design, like sing to me and be exciting.
Are there things that instantly kill a piece for you?
Perspective.
Meaning like height of a perspective.
Proper
Okay.
perspective. Like the angles are all perfect.
Why?
I realize that I sometimes I go into this mode sometimes, and I'll like and I kind of get in this weird mode of like, oh, I have to make this perfect corner and perfect angle. I'm like, oh, wait a minute, no, let me mess that up. I need to mess things up.
What?
So,
I have the same issue. Like, I don't want perspective to be correct. I don't, like, intentionally with this, I'm doing something that's sort of meant to be this, I refer to it as dolly, where he would do like a bowl on a still life, and then he would have one edge of the table behind it higher than the other edge on the other side of the bowl. And so it would be like a gap in space, or like somehow it was just disconnected.
right,
Yeah.
a disconnect, right?
And I really,
so like, yeah,
I love those moments. And then I start to go like, okay, how can I put those in with the intention of, like, same thing with perspective. Perspective, I don't want to be perfect of any sort in my work. But those moments with the, those, like, you know, misalignment, awkward edges, shapes that are kind of funny, that should not be super like important in a piece, but all of a sudden are called out as the star. And so
yeah.
I think those are the things that I really want to celebrate in all of the work that I do. Are there things that when you are making your work that you find makes the piece like distinctly yours? Like the equivalent of, like, I think color is my, like, if color is not my piece, it's not me. It's some other weirdo person that made the piece. Is there something like that where you can look at it and, oh, this is definitely the calling card?
I don't know. I'm not sure about that one.
Okay.
because my work has been so varied. And I try, like, you know, and because my work has been varied, I try to have like that connective tissue between them. And I guess maybe if I were to answer that, I would have to think about what is that connecting piece that makes my work mine.
Yeah. There's got to be something, whether it's like
Well, I mean, for number one, it's definitely the flat planes and pulling planes like this up. I mean, if you look at even the street scenes in the book that in Mommy King, like the street is up and everything's all wonky, you know. So it's, for me, it's those angles. But then furthermore, like, because a lot of people do that, but and then you know, I feel like my color palette tends to generally run in the, you know, greens and oranges and reds, and very rare, it will sometimes go, like my older palettes were different. But I think it was just, it's adding line elements, mixing them with rendered elements. But I don't know. I feel like I'm still, what is the word, like identity crisis? I feel like I always have that, and or some things that I apply to my work is, you know, still there are things that I'll do instinctively, but then I'm realizing, oh, I do that with all my pieces.
I love that. Oh, what's that word? And then it just, identity crisis. Like, horrifying. I thought it was going to be something that was very simple, like, you know, oh, like, you know, juxtaposition or something like that. And then like, nope, it's the worst word you can use. You know how to pick them. So one of the things that I like, speaking on that identity crisis element, let's dive into that for a second for those that are interested. Do you still feel, I mean, obviously there's imposter syndrome. Hey, I'm not good enough. But do you find that there's times where you start to like realize that you're making a work that doesn't feel like you, or is, you know, a challenge to who you are as an artist? Or like, I'm trying to think if there's a good way to like describe what I'm talking about. And the like, you make a work and you go like, oh, this is too close to so-and-so's work, or those kind of elements. Does that happen ever? Or do you feel like you sort of have gotten to a point where you're like, I don't need my work to be, or I'm not worried about like mimicry?
Oh, right. You know, I know what you mean. I don't know. You know, when I was doing a lot of exploration, I was discovering a lot of artists, especially on Instagram, and I was someone who didn't like to be influenced by other artists because of that fear of mimicking, you know. But what I do like is watching the technique and the process. But what happens is when you start even mimicking the processes, they tend to look similar, and the elements tend to be, I'm drawn to certain people's work because it reminds me of what I've done with my own work. And I'm like, oh yeah, I like what they're doing with it, because I can pull some old pieces that look like what I'm doing now. Like that. And so, I don't know where I'm going with this, but I don't know. But I have done pieces where like, oh, this is not me, and I'll put it away and no one ever sees it, you know. I've done that. Yeah.
There are definitely things that I think most artists' repertoire that is I've crossed a line into a world where I don't want people to see this,
right.
or, you know, because it's too close to someone else's work or what have you. I mean, I know I am guilty of it. One of the things I was saying to students today was even just that idea of like, are there other artists that you get compared to often? It's like, oh, your work always looks like this person's. And then you're like, oh, I can separate myself in a way. And I don't know if I get compared to a lot of like, your work looks like this person's, but I do have a lot of artists where it's like, you must like this person.
Right.
And I always get a little worried in those areas of.
Sure. Yeah. You see the influences. Well, I mean, it's kind of hard not to be influenced with social media the way it is. It's hard not to, because everyone's looking at each other and influenced to some degree, right? I don't know. Yeah, but I know what you mean. Like, you want to be. I mean, we strive to be our own voice, right? We don't want to be.
We don't want.
But yeah.
Yeah. We don't want to be the same as everybody else on in our
Right.
household or what have you. Is there are there artists or things outside of illustration proper that are like, and obviously like fashion, I understand is part of it, but are there artists that you look at and you go like, oh man, this is the thing that really I love, and not necessarily that you mimic it or anything of the sort, but it has become a part of your approach. Like, you know, like some people really love science, and so they love to dive deep into like research.
Right.
And obviously, like you have books that you've done research for. Some people love that, some people don't. And
Right.
are there things like that you sort of end up doing a lot of in your books that you're like, oh, this is my go-to?
Huh. Oh, these are really hard questions at 11 o'clock at night.
Okay, butts do you like? Do you like big butts? Do you like little butts? Do you like are you tired of butts because your husband talks about butts all the time? Are you is that what it's about?
I see how you're playing here. Like, any excuse to use butts.
It's I set up questions to make you go, I don't know how to answer that, so I can just back the butts on a regular basis.
Right.
I mean, it's a solid question. I don't know why you aren't answering it. It is really like, it's a question everybody.
Wait, what's the question again?
The question is, what kind of butts do you like?
Very clear.
Again, you had no idea this is what it was going to be. Remember, you wrote me. Okay, I have a question for you, and I want proof.
Oh.
This is
Yeah.
a hard question. Okay, a lot of people say to me at the beginning of these, like, I might have to drop off early.
Yeah.
And then they stay the whole time. And the first thought that goes in my head is, oh man, they're saying they're going to drop off early because they don't know if they'll enjoy being on this whole time. So I'm asking you a question, and it's a bold question.
That's a bold question.
I'll ask it in a nice way. Was this, because we're not at the end yet, but has this been enjoyable besides the butt talk?
Oh.
Butt talk.
Oh, that was the best.
The butt talk. Oh, it was right there. I didn't do it.
No, yeah. Yeah, I mean, obviously I'm still here, right? But I had no idea, I didn't know. I don't know. I mean, for me, I was just more worried about what I was going to produce, because I don't know, because that's where I'm at. But and I don't think I'm even close to where I want to be with this at all. I almost wish I went with something smaller, but yeah, no, I'm having a blast.
Good.
It's fun, but I also don't want to overstay too. I'm thinking how long, because this is not going anywhere closer to the end. How many hours is this? I'm like, geez, when you first said it was 4 hours, I'm like, holy crap. But I know that when I'm getting into a conversation, especially when it's about art and I'm painting, I can easily get into that. Like, I used to do this again in school. Like, we would have my friends, we would sit, we would try to stay up if we had a project, and we'd stay up really late, and then we'd just be chatting the whole time. It's just go for hours.
Artist study group.
Yeah.
Of sorts.
Pretty much.
Yeah. No, I mean, we're almost at midnight, so
Holy crap. Yeah, and I'm telling my husband, make sure my daughter Paloma's my daughter's name. She gets to bed, she tends to stay up really late. She's got that art brain too. So I need to make sure that she goes to bed on time. My bet is she's still awake right now.
She's listening to this and horrified that we've talked about the thing.
She better not be listening. She's supposed to be off screens.
No, it's always fun to me to hear, and you could be lying to my face, and I don't know, but it's always fun to hear people say I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know if I could work and talk and do all these things, and then at the end of the night, it just becomes this oh yeah, we're just shooting the S.
Yeah.
And there is no like perception of what is what has to happen, or like it really just becomes this conversation that in some ways, like we start out talking about art and it devolves.
Instead of evolving, it
Yeah.
devolves.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, that's probably a better way to say it. You're good. You're good with words.
Am I? Oh, good. I'm glad I'm taking the writing route then.
Oh, you're on it.
Good.
If,
Did you hear that, Karen?
Yeah.
I'm on it.
Karen,
I'm on it.
The whole time, just looking for an excuse to drop you. That's too dark. That was way too dark. That is a somewhat little fear of mine, is that just like, oh man, if Jen tunes into this and hears me talking, who knows what I'm gonna think in the long like, I've signed up a crazy person.
I should ask you that question. Like, have you ever been worried about what you talk about, or have you ever had to what's the word, like edit or censor yourself?
Shut up. Or I've been relatively okay on here, I think. I don't think I've said anything that was outrageous. I do think there's like topics where I worry a little bit about sort of, if like I've talked about AI on here.
Oh yeah.
AI is a touchy subject, but I also am, I'm speaking my truth, and I'm not pro AI of any sort, but I also am not as fearful as some people are about it. Partially because I just like, I'm not doing something that I think AI is like leans toward at this point.
Well, right. Exactly. And I think that's I would say that's another reason why I'm kind of evolving to more hand painted work, because it's less.
Yeah.
It's like less, it leans. Yeah. It's just harder.
Digital. It leans with a digital look most of the time. And so like, you don't see a lot of like, like, I forget what it was I did the other day, just to see in Photoshop. I had a swatch of like collage. And I was like, let me see if it can like extend it. Just what kind of thing does the AI do? And boy, did it massacre it. It did not know how to like do a generative fill, even for like a little strip that was an inch at the top of an image. I was like, oh man, okay, good. I'm in the clear. Because it was so.
At least for now.
Yeah, for now. Yeah. Good catch. But that idea of like, I'm not as fearful of it as I think some other folks are, and I don't want to discredit it. But when I say on here, I worry there's someone out there going like, "Oh, he's pro AI." Like, no, I'm not.
Right.
But me saying like, I see the value of it for certain industries, not necessarily.
Right. It's not this one.
And I don't think it's great for the for people's jobs and things of the sort. It's very different than me saying I like AI, what have you. So, I just made a mark I don't want to make. Oh, now he's got an eyebrow. I'm trying to draw the horse's eyes. He's gonna have a couple little eyebrows. Kind of fun.
But choosing to do a horse is already brave in and of itself.
So this horse does not look like a horse. This horse
doesn't look like
a big chunky monkey with tiny little legs, but that's good enough. It's
that's what's so good about having your own voice.
Yeah, no, seriously. Oh man, I've had that conversation with some folks about like, if you set a style where it allows for things to be like wrong, oh man, your life is so much easier. It's you mentioned perspective. Like if you start doing anatomy correct and you get one little finger wrong, someone's going to call you on it. No one's going to look at mine and go like, "Ooh, that toenail is not right." I'm good. Go ahead.
Exactly.
I'm trying to figure out like, are there little odds and ends and touches I want to make on this that are worth hitting before it's we'll run out of time, because we are going to run out of time here in another we got 10 minutes.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and then it shuts off whether we want it to or not.
Okay.
So just a heads up.
Well, yeah, it doesn't matter because I'm running out of steam with this, and it's not going anywhere near where I want it to go.
Well, we can call it
Not representative of my usual.
This is proof that every artist doesn't. I'm not saying that you're not succeeding. I was about to say doesn't succeed, but that artists don't go through struggles. Artists don't go through moments where they like are unsure or things aren't going the direction. And I bet you if you gave it 10 more seconds, it'd be the direction that you want it. I think it's awesome. Like looking at the dog and the eyes and the little shapes and the ears, and your lamp is probably my favorite thing. Well, no, wait, the cat might be my favorite thing.
The shape,
yeah,
right
the
here.
shape, because of like the thickness of that back leg and then the thickness of the tail compared to the proportion, like the length of it is what makes me love that.
Cool.
Same with like
thanks.
the lamp. What I love about the lamp is that this is that perspective thing that we talked about.
Yeah.
Well, the table itself.
This is always a must.
Itself, like the legs and where they're put versus the tabletop, there's a weird perspective that happens there. That's awesome. And then you have the lamp, and it's not perfectly horizontal. It's got this skew to it. That's so good. Like those are the things. Those are the things that make artwork fun. Now.
And then, so usually then what I then eventually start doing is also playing with shadow shapes. They won't be accurate, but I'll
like shadows under.
Instead of rendering something, I'll do a shape of a darkness or something like that. So since I can't get there in time, I can explain it because it's just as good.
So what I like doing is making the best piece of artwork in the world. I don't have enough time to do it now, but you know, if I had another hour or so, it'd be perfect.
Exactly.
The Louvre would be calling me up saying we built a whole extra wing for this.
That's right.
Yeah, but I don't have the time tonight. Sorry.
Correct.
I'm being sassy as we go on throughout the
it's that loopiness that happens at 12.
It's called I actually woke up at 5 this morning.
Oh my God. How are you even functioning?
Oh, well, tomorrow's crash day. You want to, speaking of that, this is a bad segue. You want to hear a crazy thing? Last night, I woke up in a nightmare about a plane crashing. And then I put on my phone and opened up the news, and I was like, whoa. I know. So tonight, I hope I have dreams about winning $1 million. No, why am I $1 million?
Holy
millions
moly.
of dollars? Why cut it short?
Right? Why?
I'm in the Nostradamus of our time. Oh, that dog, the pose. I'm looking at it now on my phone because it's a little bit clearer. The pose that he's like, he's got that one leg bent up on the thing. That's so good.
So I will finish this and I will post it at some point.
There's a hesitation in you.
Or if it doesn't get done, you will have a description of the final piece.
Alt text.
A paragraph.
You know about,
I can paint the paragraph.
You know about alt text, right?
I've heard of it. Yeah,
where it's like for people who are visually impaired, and it describes the work. Just describe it in the
that's
beautiful
right.
piece.
Yes. Yes. I've heard that.
I have a question for you, and this is sort of a loaded question, maybe before we walk the door.
God, what is it with the loaded question?
I'm wondering, you're on Instagram, right?
Yeah.
Are you on Blue Sky?
Yeah, I am.
What's your thought? Because I'm weighing this out for myself. Of like, there's a lot of followers on Instagram, and I keep going under the assumption that it's not going to disappear. People are still going to use it, and art directors. That's what matters.
Art, right?
I love artists in general, but one of the reasons for being on Instagram is because that's where art directors, editors, and whatnot are looking at artists. I don't know if they're all going to jump to Blue Sky of some sort, but are you just maybe this is too loaded of a question, but just are you planning on staying on Instagram out of curiosity?
So like I keep waffling, right? So like part of me is I mean I've been trying to load up to change completely, but I'm waiting it out for a bit. but ideally I would like to just up and leave. It's not like my audience is very different from yours. Like I don't really I was never that prolific about posting to begin with. So I'm not sure if I'm losing that much not being on there, but but at the same time, I think that I haven't made that decision yet. I don't have a definitive answer for that yet. I thought I did. I mean, I think more so for like Facebook, for example.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm not,
because I'm on there.
I have stuff on Facebook, but my wife takes care of it. I'm not, and even at that, it does not have the same like interaction.
Mm-hmm.
Like, do you have a Kara account?
Yes, but I stopped using.
Did you get any interaction at all recently, or is it dead for you?
I haven't looked like that. I mean, so I guess you could say it's pretty dead for me right now because I haven't really been on it. So, and I think it feels more like a portfolio space.
Yeah. No, it's the same thing for me. Like I imagine that there's probably people that are active on it, but it doesn't have the same appeal that it did the day that it came out and everybody was jumping over there.
Exactly.
It has changed quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
So anyways, okay, that's the loaded topic, last minute loaded topic question of the night. You don't have to answer any more tough ones. I mean, you still didn't answer what your favorite type of butt is, but at some
what my favorite, I'm gonna let it cut out before I can answer.
You like hold out. Let me yeah.
I don't know, it feels like a very personal question.
I mean, you can make some of the things that you have gone through medically.
Okay, let me think of it like a doctor would.
Yeah.
All butts are wonderful.
Just say a healthy
butt.
Yeah.
Is a good butt.
You went to visual right away. I'm saying like,
that's my problem. Yeah. Everything is
an efficient butt.
Okay. It's not all the butt when it comes to efficiency, though.
I don't like butts that sit around lazy all day. I like an efficient butt.
Yeah, good point.
Okay.
Good point. Firm.
This has gone sour. My conversation.
All right. Good night.
Okay. Here's what I'll do. I'm gonna switch back to my face.
God, I'm starting to like put lines down. I don't like. Hold on. I sound drunk and not drinking. Hold on.
I'm going back to my face. So here's what.
Okay.
You don't have to if you don't want to.
Okay, that's okay. This piece is not.
I would love if you went back to your face and you just had paint all over your face. Like there's just like paint on the ceiling. Okay. I will say thank you. Yeah. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. As usual, I go into these and I'm always like tired and like, how am I gonna pull a 4-hour thing? But the time flew by. It always happens. Everybody's lovely in the kidlit world, and so I thoroughly enjoyed our conversation tonight, and I giggled, and there was lots of guffaws from my. You can hear. Okay, yeah, your audio dropped out for a second on mine. Okay.
Oh, it's my. Why did that happen? Because I'm fully.
No,
it's pretty good.
I think it may have been like it was picking up my audio so much that it dropped out yours. I didn't mean to. It overlapped. Anyways, this has been lovely. I'm glad that we had a chance to chat a second time outside of the classroom, and I really appreciate you taking the time and putting up with my nonsense for the night.
It was fun. I enjoyed it. Thanks for having me, though. Yeah.
We'll see what the reaction is on YouTube.
Yeah. I think now it's gonna live forever.
It is going up on YouTube this weekend. I will share your personal email in it. Find things to like have it all come back to you. Anybody with a healthy butt, thank you for joining us tonight. Okay, that's it. We'll end there. Have a good evening. Thank you. Bye.
Bye. white. Good night.
No, you have to wait. There's an X button. That is. There you.
I,
All right.
good night.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah. Hey. Okay, now it's just me. Real quick, I was just gonna say, for anybody who has made it through to the end here, since I have like 2 minutes left, I'm just gonna throw in. I've made the ads for the next month. I will probably post them either the monthly thing tomorrow or some point this weekend. And then next week we have on Kayla Heron, who will be joining us. And I'm very excited to chat with Kayla. In fact, the next month, I can say them right now, I think. Kayla Heron. Then we have Chuck Groenink. I probably pronounced that wrong, but Groenink. Then we have Ruth Chan. And then the last one, and this one's a special one for me, is Madison Safer, who is a former student. They can come on and tell bad stories about me. So we'll have that coming up. But I will produce the ad and put it out there for people to follow. Otherwise, I'll see you next week. Bye, everybody. Do I have paint on my nose? Oh, no, it's just a shine. Okay. Goodbye, everybody.